Right. Good evening, everyone. It's just gone 7 o'clock. Welcome to this evening's Community and Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Just as a reminder, this is a hybrid meeting today. So we have members in the chamber, we have officers on Teams, and we also have executive members on and other members on Teams as well. So just as a reminder, if you are not talking, please keep your camera off. And if you've got any questions, please do in Teams, please do raise your hand. I will see them. I have got the system here beside me as well. For members in the room, please do raise your hands and we will get through this as soon as possible. Okay, so first item first, apologies for absence. Have we had any apologies, Callum?
No apologies, Chairman.
Okay. Minutes for the previous meeting, page 5 to 10. I will go through them. I do have one recommended change from the chair, but first things first, page 5. Anyone got any comments or criticisms or changes? 6. 7. 8. 'Now on page 9, there is one thing that we probably need to change, which is resolution 2, where it says the low carbon transport strategy revert to be named to a low emissions transport strategy. We're not a decision making body here. We need to put, I believe we need to put in the committee recommends that the name be reverted back. From what I recall of Pauline's conversations last week, I think that was just an error and it should be that name anyway. But I'd like to propose that from the chair just to have that corrected slightly. Can I have a seconder for that, please? Alison, thank you. Welcome, Bill. Please take an empty plinth where there is one. Can I have a vote in favour of that minor amendment, please? Those in favour? Okay, anyone against? No, any abstentions? No, okay, thank you very much. Is there anything else on page 9 from anyone? Nope. Page 10. Yes, Anne.
I'm sorry, I can't remember where it was in this document, but I think it was in the minutes. I noticed that the years were wrong. I haven't carried the pages with me, but I think possibly are the years correct in 89?
Yeah, okay. I assume no one has the objection to correcting the year to 2022. Okay. If that's the case, then other than those a minor typo and the amendment already gone through, then can we have a vote in favour of the minutes, please? All those in favour? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, declarations of interest. Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Declaration of interest in item 15. As a director of a small business in Wokingham, I declare a judicial pecuniary interest in this item and will leave the chamber when we get to that item. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Anyone else? Nope. Okay, public question time. Were there any public questions submitted, Callum?
None received, Chair.
Okay. Any member questions?
None received.
Okay. Community safety, on to item 12, which is about meeting the agenda this evening. Community Safety Partnership Annual Report. I looked at Teams and I believe it's Narinda who's going to take us off with that for the starters. So over to you, Narinda, on Teams.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. The Community Safety Partnership Annual Report, members have in front of them, is an annual report with respect to the activities of the Community Safety Partnership. And the recommendations within the report are for the committee to note the report and also note the key achievements and the performance of the Community Safety, Wokingham Community Safety Partnership activities for 2021. The overall, what I would say about the Community Safety Partnership is, despite a very challenging last 12 months throughout the pandemic, the Community Safety Partnership overall, in terms of crime performance, we've achieved across the board nearly a 10% performance reduction in terms of crime across the board, which is a really, really good news story, given the challenges and the issues and concerns that we've challenged and grappled with across the last 12 months along the backdrop of the pandemic. So in terms of the achievements, some of the key achievements that are noted throughout the report for committee members to note are that the Community Safety Partnership has undertaken a comprehensive strategic assessment, which looks at detail at a full range of partnership data and performance. And from that strategic assessment and the data within it, we've informed a new 3-year community safety strategy. We've drafted a consultation and undertaken full consultation with a new 3-year community safety partnership strategy being set out in draft for the next 3 years to cover 2021 to 24. We've undertaken a wide-reaching domestic abuse needs assessment that's informed a new commissioning of our local service of domestic abuse services. We've commissioned the new domestic abuse service after undertaking a full and comprehensive needs assessment. We've also commissioned a new substance misuse service as part of the partnership deliveries, both for adults and young people across the borough. And both of those contracts are mobilised and in place as we speak. The domestic abuse contract is being mobilised as we speak. Sorry, the substance misuse contract is actually in place, as we know. We've also completed a full and comprehensive review of the prevent and channel arrangements, which is in relation to safeguarding and preventing people across the borough being brought, drawn into radicalisation and terrorism. We've undertaken a full comprehensive local approach to problem solving and antisocial behaviour, and we've secured resources. And we've also set up 2 new boards, an exploitation and violence reduction board, and also a local domestic abuse partnership board in line with the Domestic Abuse Act for 2021, which came in earlier this year. So those are sort of the overall really high level key achievements throughout the report that I would like to highlight as part of my introduction. And then the report goes through a number of different projects that the Community Safety Partnership has been involved in to achieve some of the reductions in crime that are outlined in table 1.1, which is included in the report. As we can see, table 1.1 in the report, if I take you to that table, outlines that we've seen quite a large number of reductions and good reductions across the board in many crime categories, including, as I said in my introduction, all crime, residential burglary has seen a reduction, violence with injury has seen a reduction, and domestic abuse incidents and drug possession offences, as well as criminal damage and robbery of personal property, have all seen reductions across the board. Theft of vehicle has also seen a huge decrease, as has theft of vehicle as well. So those are some of the key achievements around the reductions. Some of the increases that the partnership has seen has been around racially and religiously aggravated offences, which we've seen a slight increase in, and we've also seen an increase in burglaries from sheds and garages, as well as a small increase in antisocial behaviour around some of our residential addresses. The report then goes on to sort of outline our community safety partnership subgroups, how we're delivering some of this work, and also sort of the governance structure for decision making, and also covers some of our key projects that we've delivered this year, including the KICS projects, which works with young people to reduce antisocial behaviour and divert young people from activities across the borough to cover that. And also the Duke of Edinburgh project that we've undertaken as part of the projects in the partnership, substance misuse projects that we've covered to reduce substance misuse and the access of availability of drugs across the district as well, and the borough, and also some of the projects that we've been working in partnership together with the Youth Offending Service as well. The last thing I'd probably like to highlight as part of the report is that we have had some funding from the Police and Crime Commissioner, which is delivered some of the projects that I outlined as part of the delivery that we've done this year, and that's enabled us to deliver some of the projects and some of the reductions in crime. But I'd also probably highlight that COVID has drawn our resources and some of our attention into two key areas in terms of crime reduction. One has been around antisocial behaviour, and some of the work that we've been undertaking as part of the response to the pandemic has been the increase in antisocial behaviour in parks and green spaces, and also some of our resources have been really clearly drawn to tackle some of the issues that have been highlighted as part of the pandemic in domestic abuse work stream. So those are the key sort of areas in terms of performance that the Community Safety Partnership have been dealing with, and the report goes on in real detail to highlight to members some of the work that we've achieved in the last 12 months. Happy to take questions.
Thank you. If you've got questions, put your hands up now. Okay, we'll go to Sam first, Paul, Clive, Anne, in that order, and then Alison. Sam, go ahead.
Hello. First of all, thank you so much. I think it's really great to see the work of the Community Safety Partnership, and it's great to see an overall reduction in crime. So some great stats here. One of the questions I had was, it'd be really great to look at the stats for victims of a cybercrime, because as we all know, since the pandemic, sort of victims of cybercrime, those targeting vulnerable people who are now at home, you know, through banking fraud or spoofing text messages, emails. It'd be really interesting to get, you know, what your overview of it is, or potentially look at sort of future including those in the stats as well.
Would you like me to take that question as we go along, Chair? Is that okay?
So basically, can you answer that question, then we'll go to other people rather than just do them all in block, otherwise we're going to forget them.
Yeah, absolutely. So cybercrime is one of the key areas that have been highlighted when we've undertaken our strategic assessment this year. Cybercrime has been one of the key areas, like I said, has been highlighted as a key concern. Victims of cybercrime across the board, both nationally and locally, have increased, and we have noted this increase. I think part of the strategic assessment sort of gap areas that we did recognise is trying to get a real good handle on understanding some of our cybercrime stats locally. So cybercrime victims and the support for cybercrime locally is delivered predominantly through Action Fraud, which is an agency sort of set up independently to tackle fraud related offences, including cybercrime, because it is such a complex and detailed area of work. It requires quite a intensive response and quite a complex response. But mainly we are supporting victims through our work with our public protection partnership colleagues, so trading standards and fraud prevention work. As part of the pandemic, very early on, we noted that there was a spike in the number of victims coming forward for cybercrime type offences, for vaccination and PPE related fraud offences were being reported to us and highlighted, and other offences that were sort of being highlighted to us, such as please have your, we can offer a service to have your driveway anti-backed, for example, antibacterially clean. And we saw a spike of these sort of offences both nationally and locally for Wokingham. So we did very quickly put out some really clear communications and press releases and correspondence to some of our more vulnerable victims, older victims, and those that weren't perhaps so au fait with using some of the technology that was being pushed as part of the pandemic response in terms of platforms that we were asking people to go onto. So we pushed out some really, really clear messages. But I note the committee's request to look at cybercrime offences and victims, so we can, for future reference, add that to the report as a specific request.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Paul?
Thank you very much for your introduction, Dorinda. Most helpful. And thank you for the report. I've got a few questions. On page 14, the missing data for the antisocial behaviour other, which in the June 2020 report covering the 2019-2020 year was labelled as Thames Valley Police. I assume that's the same. And at that time, it was 1,235 incidents. Do you know what those figures are, to be confirmed, and how does that impact on all crimes? So that's my first question. My second one is more of a comment. The residential burglary dwellings, looking again at the report in 2020, there was a small drop in these incidents for 2019-2020 compared to 2018-2019. But a significant drop this time for 2020-21 compared to the previous year. And therefore, I would agree that it's probably due to the pandemic and more people being at home. That also relates to a number of others. And because of the pandemic, you've seen decreases in the numbers. But on the domestic abuse side on page 14, again, looking at the June 2020 report, there was a significant rise in figures comparing 2018-2019 and 2019-2020 with plus 35%. And it's concerning that there could be a lot of unreported incidents due to the lockdown, especially as victims are reported that they've found it more difficult to come forward and report or seek help as a result of the lockdown and being at home with their abuser. So what more can be done by the community partnership to assist them in reporting? And my final question is on page 27, related to the funding. I noticed the funding's actually reduced this time round compared to previously. So what impact is that going to have on the partnership, considering that costs are rising? Thank you.
Before you come back on that, Narendra, that's on page 27, you said, Paul, wasn't it? Yeah, the reduction in, what was it, 100 quid, sorry, 1,100 quid or something.
Yeah, my point is, although it seems fairly small, costs are rising all the time.
No, it's a fair point. I just wanted to clarify that
there is an impact.
Go ahead, Narendra.
Thank you. So first of all, in terms of the figures for antisocial behaviour, unfortunately, I don't have them to hand at the moment. I don't know, there are other colleagues on the call, but I'm not sure whether they will be available to assist. But at the moment, the antisocial behaviour figures, the reason they were missing, and I think the report outlined at the time of writing, there was a technical issue with trying to extract those figures. In addition to that, there has been some change in the reporting levels, so the way certain crimes are reported. So we're just trying to ensure, in terms of the figures that are reported within the report, that they are consistent, and we are giving consistent sort of figures so they are comparable year to year. I'm happy to add those at the point where we have them. I don't know, Felicity, I know Felicity Parker, the LPA commander, is on the call, whether Felicity, you're able to comment at all.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, all. Good evening, Chair. In relation to the ASB figures, we do have them. I don't have them to hand as to what the TVP figures are, but we are working to see how we can collaborate a lot more to understand what the ASB picture looks like moving forward. We did have it last year, but we will be able to get that figures together, and we'll make sure that is included in that report. But going on to the burglary dwelling, I'm glad you noted the significant decrease, which is really positive for the residents of Wokingham. We just have to see how well we can maintain that reduction as people do start leaving their homes and going back to work. But it's something we're very proud of, and hopefully people will feel a lot more safe in the area around that. If I go on to talk about the domestic abuse element, we did do a lot of work to see what we could do to try and understand the risks of those people who were maybe at home a lot more during the pandemic than they could have been. Concerned, as you rightly said, about whether they were able to reach out for help when needed, and potentially that the risks that they were facing would be a lot greater because they were within those confined areas with their potential perpetrator. We did make sure that during the first lockdown, we visited those who were of medium risk to us or repeat victim to make sure that they were safe, and we approached them as the local officers around that. We also put in strategies where if someone was in the supermarket, they could say a particular word and they would be able to go to an area where they could speak in confidence as well. And also there's the other additional campaign such as Ask Annie, where if anyone goes into the pharmacy, then they're able to again go into a side room and speak to get some additional help. There's always, I think you should be really proud of the additional work that has happened in Wokingham Borough around the scrutiny of what the plans are looking forward around the domestic abuse services, and that will really help looking forward into the future as well as to making sure we've got the best possible chances to help those who are suffering domestic abuse in the area.
Thank you for that, Felicity. That was very interesting. Thank you. Can I just ask that, and this is to you as well, Narinda, that when we do get the antisocial behaviour, other data, as it were, that it be added into the chart and sent around to us ASAP, just so that we have the visibility and context. I understand when things are broken in the system and changes are made, etc. But it is important that we don't wait until this time next year, as it were. I'd like to know that data in case we need to have further conversation. I assume by the nod, Paul, you were going to ask the same thing. Thank you. Anything else?
It was just a bit on the funding. I'm not sure if that was answered.
No, it wasn't. Thank you. I see Simon's just appeared on camera.
Do you mind, Chair, if I take this bit?
So go for it.
So the funding is worked on an historical formula. And as you know, Wokingham has some really low crime rates compared to other areas. It's been flagged up to internally, and we will be picking the issue up with funding going forward because we've now got a new police and crime commissioner. I think there's an opportunity to have an understanding of what our share of the funding is going forward for Berkshire. So we're picking that up internally. Yes, there has been a slight decrease and it has raised concerns internally. So we're going to pick it up in this financial year.
Thank you, Simon. So what you're saying to me, if I understand it fully, is that this historical formula, because the figures currently show a decrease, we end up with less money. But
I wouldn't say it's exact as that, Paul. What I will say is we've seen a decrease in funding, which we want to pick up with the Police and Crime Commissioner, the new one. OK. It's what we've been allocated.
OK. Right. Thanks for that. I believe it was Anne next.
Hello, I've got two questions. One is on page 16. I was just wondering what sort of cases are considered by MARAC, because it's a subset of the total number of domestic abuse cases, isn't it? So I just wondered what sort of subset it is.
I can answer that. So at MARAC, so the those cases that are considered by MARAC are only the ones that we consider are professionally assessed by a risk assessment to be of high risk. So those cases within that assessment that come out with a certain score of above a certain level then are referred to MARAC, the multi-agency panel, who will have a look at what the possible work can be done to reduce that risk to the victim and the family.
Okay, thank you. And then my other question is on page 23. I quite understand. It's about the KICS project, and it says, I think it's talking about the number of attendees to sessions. And I think it's saying that they've dropped from 25 per session last year to 5.5 this year. Is that correct?
Just going to double check. Sorry, what page was that?
Sorry.
23, page 23.
Top paragraph.
I'm just reading it, Narendra, and the line, I think, is the average number of attending sessions being restricted has resulted in the reduction of 25 last year down to 5.5 this year. I'm assuming that's due to COVID restrictions and people can't attend as many sessions and things like that.
But why would there be a drop between these 2 years like that?
Chair, can I clarify and come back?
Yes.
With that, is that okay? Thank you.
Yeah, I think that is, because that's something, yeah. I'll spot it down. Something weird going on there.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
No, that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yep. Clive.
Thank you very much, Guy, and thank you very much for the report, Narendra. I've got a few questions, but I wanted to come back on this funding for the Community Safety Partnership that Paul had mentioned. And Simon, you say that it is a historical formula, and because our crime numbers are improving, going down, then that's possibly a reason for us.
No, Clive, I didn't say because the figures have gone down. It's just our allocation from the Policing Crime Commissioner, and it's based on an old formula.
Right, based on an old formula. Well, I'd like him to base it on his recent preset, because I'm sure you're aware the Police and Crime Commissioner has taken an awful lot more from residents this year than they did last year. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I have a feeling it was in the region of 10%.
Although it was a former Police and Crime Commissioner who set that budget. Because the new one was only elected in May, and the budget would have been set for February, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but we are now passing on that preset. We will be doing it in the next few weeks. Passing on an extra 10%. So I think that he should really have a close look at this, Mr. Barber, and come back and sharpen his pencil. And I would have actually liked to see us as a overview and scrutiny committee ask the chief executive to send a fairly strong letter saying that we're not happy that this money has gone down, bearing in mind that you have asked us for a lot more money. But I don't know what other members of the committee feel about that. Maybe we can think about it and come back to it later on. But I've got a question on page.
Before that, Clive.
Yep.
Felicity, I see your hands up.
Yeah, it's not for me to answer for Mr. Barber at all, but maybe for context, it might be useful to know that, of course, the PCC's funding goes some way towards the CSP, but then a myriad of other work that goes on and supporting sort of the Violence Reduction Unit and Victims First and other initiatives around the area. So the CSP is only a small part, and I think both the local authority and the police put quite a lot of resources in to make sure that the CSP works. So it's not just the funding that makes the CSP function as effectively as it does.
Okay, thank you for that. Carry on, Clive. Sorry, I just thought that was important.
Okay, so on page 12, Narinda, you say that a new 5-year domestic abuse service contract has been commissioned. Are you able to give us any details of what that is? What the contract is?
Absolutely. So our current contract will be ending on the 30th of June, and the current contract provider, who is Berkshire Women's Aid, will continue to work closely with us. But the new contract was awarded to a provider who is well versed in working with perpetrators and domestic abuse, and is called Cranston. They will take over the contract or running of the contract on the 1st of July. The details of the contract will include a helpline provision, so 24/7 helpline provision, close work with victims to look at safety planning and assisting them with work to reduce the risk to them and their families. So that's the independent domestic abuse advisors working closely with victims. It will also include access and support at refuge provision, as well as assistance in terms of working with young people in schools to support any trauma-informed type approaches that we take with young people who may be victims of domestic abuse or witnessing domestic abuse themselves as part of the incidents that may be occurring in their households. So this new service provision was increased by the council in terms of funding in this area. So that was really very, very positive and a real good news story for our residents locally. And it will mean that we are able to really engage with victims more positively and increase our reach to the number of residents receiving this service.
Okay, that's I think something that we can look forward to. Will we be able to have an update, say in March of next year, as to how the first 6 months have gone?
Absolutely, we will be keeping a very close working relationship and eye on that, so we can absolutely bring back a report that outlines how the first quarter or 3 quarters of the implementation of the contract is going. That's I will make a note.
That would work very well, because that will allow us to tie in with the police and fire when we try and bring them back in around March next year. So that would work very well, pandemic permitting. Go ahead, Clive.
Yep, thank you, Guy. You've also commissioned a new substance misuse service for adults and young people. Can you tell us a bit about that? And does it include people who have misused in the past and have changed their habits? Are we beginning to use them to try to stop young people from going down the wrong road?
So I'll take the second bit of the question first. Absolutely, we work with a number of different agencies and charitable organisations locally, as well as the commission contract provider. And as part of that, we recognise that, especially when speaking to or encouraging young people to make healthy and positive choices, actually trying to engage with them with somebody who has lived experience of many of these situations or stories that we're trying to put across is more beneficial than perhaps somebody who isn't well versed in the area. So we absolutely, where we have people who want to give back, as it was, or want to be involved in delivering services as part of the good news story and as part of trying to encourage people to make healthy choices, we have the provision for local charitable organisations to do that. obviously people are assessed and risk assessed so that we manage that process safely, because there are sort of always concerns around managing that. So we do that in a very organised and very safe way. And in terms of the new contract for substance misuse, which also received some increased funding in terms of the council provision for the service, again, a very good news story, allowed us to build on the adults only service, which we had commissioned beforehand, and has allowed us to increase the service to bolt on a young people's specific service called Here For You, which will be working for young people in schools, and also specialist services for young people to refer themselves into, and is a different service from that which caters for the needs of adult substance misusers. So for the young people service, it's more tailored towards media and online platforms, which is more well, it's more intuitive and more creative way of speaking to young people in a way that is right for them. And then an adult-based service which operates on a way that would be specific for adults, and allows for those two services to be separate but caters for two specific needs in the borough. So again, we've increased our reach to the residents and the offer to the residents through both of those, the substance misuse and the domestic abuse contract this year.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I ask another question, Guy?
One more, and then I'm
Yep.
going to go to. Okay, I've got a list of people. So carry on. It's glad.
Okay, so I'll just ask one more, and then you can come back to me again when you're ready, Guy. Still on page 12, you say that local prevent being given new guidance and some new regulations. Now, I'm not sure whether you can answer questions really about this in a public forum. If you're not happy doing that, or if Felicity is not happy about doing that, then that's okay with me. But my question is, do you think that Prevent is actually working?
For us locally, I can answer this question in terms of my experience of the processes and the experience in terms of safeguarding local residents. So for us locally, I would say that we have very good, very robust processes in place to safeguard individuals, and it's very much about us ensuring that agencies, the multi-agency setup that we have, is around partners communicating very clearly to each other where they may recognise that a safeguarding concern is of an issue, being able to flag that concern and ensuring that the right agencies are communicating with each other to wrap around services for individuals that may have been of concern, to divert them and to tackle any concerns that we have with them. So in terms of those processes locally, we absolutely have very clear and robust processes for individuals being referred to a safeguarding panel known as Channel Panel, which is a multi-agency panel that looks at any particular referrals that are made to the panel from multiple agencies, schools, police, and actually even families and friends that may have concerns. So in terms of our local processes, they are very much geared up and are responsive in terms of good practice that government and the guidance sets out. And for us locally, we hear cases that are of concern, and we act accordingly. So we wrap safeguarding services around individuals that are of concern, with a view to be able to challenge those particular issues and concerns that individuals may be holding. And that I can report that those processes and that support is working very well locally.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Shirley next, and then it's Alison. I saw Phil indicate, and then Sam again.
Thank you, Guy. Thank you, Narinda, for a very comprehensive report. I've got two questions. First one is around young people and alcohol. And it's particularly had become very evident around the summer, where there's been a lot of young people congregating in the borough's parks, drinking a lot of alcohol, leaving a lot of mess, broken glass, cans, and so on and so forth. And you know, kids are kids; they're going to do that sort of thing. But they're getting the alcohol from somewhere. You know, they're getting it from shops. Underage young people are being sold alcohol. And I know that Thames Valley Police some years ago had a thing called Operation Fizzy, where they really worked very, very hard on targeting shops that were selling alcohol to young people. And I wondered if that is still going on, or if it's something that has been cut due to, you know, cuts in police funding, whatever. So that's my first question. I don't know if you want to take that one straight away, and then I'll come back with my second one.
Felicity, yes, we do that. However, we need our cadets to do the test purchasing, and we haven't been able to use cadets in the last year. So when we have them all back, they will be absolutely helping us to understand whether our licensed premises are keeping within the law of only selling alcohol to over 18s, and they're checking ID for anyone under 25. So we're really pleased with how that does work, and it's good to keep our off licenses on check with that. So we will be working on that as soon as we get the cadets back.
Right, that's good news, because I think it was a successful scheme. That thank you. And the other question I've got is it's brilliant that the crime, the reported crime is down in most areas, but what I'd be quite interested to know is the clear up rate for crime. Is that pretty static? Has that increased, improved, or has that also reduced due to the pandemic, because officers were detailed onto other duties during the pandemic?
The outcome rate has increased over the last year because we've had the opportunity to use these out of court disposals, which is another mechanism for us to be able to bring closure to a crime where there is evidence of that crime. However, they don't have to go through the court processes. So the clear up code is approximately 14% for all crime, and it is higher for certain other areas of that. But so there's 14%. Some of those will be charges which go through to the court systems, and others will be out of court disposals where they are given a caution, but it's on a condition. So it might be to repay the damage they've caused, go on a course, apologies, depending on kind of what level it is. Does that make sense?
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, Alison.
Sorry, can I just come in on one point there?
Okay, come on, come on in.
Sorry. Yeah, just on the point of sort of secret shoppers, if you like. I do know that the police are carrying out this task, but also our own trading standards also carry this out. They have got a little bit behind, obviously, because of COVID, along with food inspections and that sort of thing, but it is something that trading standards take very seriously and continue to do.
Actually, just coming in on this, because this just literally just occurred to me, and this might be something that Narinda, Felicity, or even yourself, Bill, know. If someone is taking an order of food via delivery, and there is alcohol there as well, is there any requirement to basically be age checked for that delivery under the Check 25 rules? Because it suddenly occurs to me, because effectively anyone over a certain age can have a debit card these days, but they're not necessarily over the age of 18 if they've got a debit card. So that is, I can see Gregor's got his hand up, but it just occurred to me because I don't know the answer.
Chairman, I can actually answer that question if you want me to.
Please,
because this is the field of my profession. And the answer to the question is yes. The delivery drivers are meant to age check anybody on the doorstep that answers the door, that should be in receipt of any alcohol products that they've ordered, and they are instructed to remove alcohol and take it back and issue a refund if the person that answers the door isn't over the age of 25 or can't prove that they're over the age of 21. The reality is, and Deliveroo in particular, are coming under a lot of pressure because of this, because their drivers are not doing it. And many retailers are pulling away from some of these services now that COVID is over, purely because the delivery drivers are not checking as hard as they should. But at the moment, there isn't a requirement for them to provide evidence that they have checked, only to tick a box to say that they have.
Thank you, Gregor. That was very interesting. The second part of that question is, have we ever done any of those checks on delivery drivers on that aspect? It's a genuine question because Shirley's right. They've got to get this alcohol from somewhere, and it occurs to me that's a very weak path of resistance, as it were. I assume from silence that the answer is no, we haven't looked at it. Okay, then, Alison.
Chair, I can tell you if you order a case of wine through Amazon, I had to show my driving license to prove that I was of age. Right, hello, Narinda and Felicity. I wanted to ask about pages 22 and 23, where we're looking at tackling antisocial behaviour, misuse and crime. You know, there sounds to be some fantastic projects, interventions going on with KICS project, Positive Pathways, Duke of Edinburgh. Is this happening right across the borough, or do we have certain towns or villages that need far more intervention than others?
So when we deliver the projects, they are the whole of the borough is considered. But clearly we have finite resources, and also certain areas are more of a hotspot issue than others. So we try and target these projects in those areas where we will make the most impact. And we feel that that is the correct way to sort of tackle some of the issues that are being highlighted as part of the antisocial behaviour concerns. So that we really do some targeted work with the KICS project, and also with Positive Pathways in particular schools that will benefit. As we've identified before, you know, we have finite resources, and as much as we would love to spread them across the whole of the borough, they are targeted in the areas where we feel will make the most impact.
To add to that, those projects that Narendra has detailed are the ones which we use the funding from the CSP to help deal with some of the ASB. Of course, the bread and butter way for us to deal with the ASB is to analyse the information, identify where the hotspots are, get our uniformed officers and from both of the local authority and the police to those areas to understand what we can do to try and problem solve there, whether that's going to the area, maybe using dispersal orders, designing out some of the issues as well. So those small pockets of funding are used for diversionary tactics for some particular individuals, but we still, across the whole borough, wherever it is, have that standard response, as I just described.
So really, we're reacting to young people who have already engaged in antisocial behaviour, rather than being able to do projects to set up positive, activity to deter young people from engaging in antisocial behaviour.
So there's a variety of things. It depends what our response is. There's some more work that we're doing with the CSP, not necessarily around ASB, but looking at how we can get at the earliest opportunity to try and prevent young people to get involved in serious violence, to try and reduce that threat that they may pose, for example, getting involved in knife crime or getting involved in county drugs lines. So there's another stream of work that we're working on there, which is much more preventative space as opposed to waiting for something to happen. So we've got our eyes kind of open to what that threat assessment looks like to see what the best intervention possibly could be.
Okay, thank you for that. Chair, could I ask another question? Thank you. Just looking at page 22 and page 27, how do you plan to be able to improve your engagement with housing associations?
Simon, did you want to come in?
Yeah, do you mind if I take this one, Chair?
No problem.
Okay, so we have a strategic group that works with the housing associations in the borough. The housing associations in total have a similar size stock to Wokingham Borough Council stock in the borough. So we have been working with them to improve this. What I would say is where members are raising concerns about housing associations and their ability to deal with antisocial behaviour, we are picking those up with the associations on a one-to-one basis. But on a collective, I think we've got something like 25 housing associations working in the borough, and we've got 6 key ones we work with. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, to be honest, Alison, and we do need to improve that, and we're working with our strategic colleagues to do that. But I'm afraid it usually is a member complaint or another complaint that raises this up on the agenda. We will be picking it up through the strategic meetings going forward.
Okay, thank you.
But it is
Thank you, Chair.
difficult, as you know.
Okay, thank you, Phil.
Good evening, Narinda. Thank you very much for this report. It's really very comprehensive and very welcome. But I want to talk about domestic abuse, if you don't mind, with regards to that section of your report. I note that you talked briefly about the new Cranston contract. With reference to that and the strategy on domestic abuse, the new domestic abuse bill has broadened the definition of victims to include, for example, children within an abusive relationship. What strategies are in place? Should there be any increase of burden on the various services within Wokingham Borough Council as a result of this? That's the first question. Second question, I note on page 33, with regards to the strategy, you mentioned the Healthy Relationships course in some schools. Is there a campaign to increase that or broaden that to all schools? And what considerations have been made with regard to pathways for children who may be victims to be able to report their experiences separate from perhaps their parents? And finally, there's a strong campaign, very quick one. There's a strong campaign online called Safe Spaces, which led by royalmail.com, which gives victims or potential victims a traceless click facility to find information about support that's available locally or nationally. And I wonder if there's any chance of this facility being included on the Wokingham Borough Council website.
Absolutely. So I'll take the question about the safe spaces first. We are just in the process as part of the more detailed work that we're doing to ensure that we are compliant with the new DA bill in terms of our website, to bring some of the content of the website up to the point where it needs to be in relation to some of the changes that have come about. So we can absolutely have a look at including safe spaces as part of the list of providers and information that we can provide on our website. That's something we can certainly do, take away and have a look at and add to that. The new pages are looking to go live on the 1st of July, just in line with the new contract going live as well. So I can update members on that. In terms of young people being victims or children being identified as victims within their own right, we have a whole host of different bases that we're looking at this work in. I mentioned earlier that we are already working with children and young people in schools. So we're providing very detailed and close working mentoring and also other supported services for young people and children in schools that either disclose within their own right incidents that are going on in their home, or have come to light as part of perhaps that MARAC work the high risk cases that I spoke about earlier. So those individuals are worked with to ensure that any support needs that they have, we can address those locally with the children and young people. But in addition to that, we are looking at work in combination with the Children and Young People's Partnership, which is led closely by Children's Services, so Children's Social Care, to have a look at what that may mean in terms of a future response for children and young people across the borough. So, i.e., what possible resources could it draw upon, and do we have the necessary services in place to respond to those needs of children and young people, because we identify that catching them early and breaking that cycle of domestic abuse is very, very important. So there's those two key hosts, those key pieces of work going on within that workspace. And then your first question, I'm sorry, you broke up just absolutely just a little bit at the key point. Do you mind just repeating that? Sorry.
Well, no, I mean, you've sort of covered it really. It was just about the broadening of the definition of victims under the new domestic abuse bill, and you sort of covered the fact that you're looking at various pieces of work to provide pathways for support for those young people if that's what they are.
I can also add actually just to that, Chair, just to say that we are also doing a very detailed piece of work under our housing needs assessment work that we're covering as part of the new local domestic abuse board work. So we are doing further consultation both with victims of domestic abuse, children and adults, to have a look at their housing support needs as part of the work within the new bill, to ensure that those needs are covered, so that we have in place locally the housing support that is required by victims, to ensure that should they choose to leave their property and their home, that we have the necessary support in accommodation and otherwise in place to support those victims. So there's a great deal of work going on around this space in terms of the partnerships delivery on this.
Thanks very much. It's great.
And thank you. I also see Simon, you're indicating.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add that it's a great point that children are actually being recognised as victims now in domestic abuse. The legislation is very new, but I can assure the board, the panel, that I've been chairing the Domestic Abuse Forum for the first couple of meetings, and I'm very keen to get the voice of the child out of this work. And I would be, I would like to come back when we do the domestic abuse report at the end of the year. And I think the voice of the child, or the impact on the children, should be something we should be reporting back to you.
Please, that would be very useful, Simon. Anything else, Phil? Okay, Sam?
So my question is regards to page 25. So in regards to child exploitation and missing process case conference known as MRAC, what is the CSP and MRAC doing in working together to sort of tackle the exploitation of young people being trafficked across the countries in things like county lines? I know you touched on that earlier, but we're really interested to know the work being done to tackle that. And also my second question would be, how prevalent is the problem of county lines where in the borough where young people are of course being trafficked from different areas of the country, often going missing?
Sure, I can. Felicity, I don't know whether you'd be a better place to answer that question.
Yeah, certainly. So the MRAC multi-agency conference work together to work out exactly what kind of plan they need to put in place for that young person to do the contextual safeguarding to keep them as safe as possible and from that threat of county drugs lines. The CDL work is always a movable feast, because it's the business model of county drugs line is extremely flexible. So there's no one static point where you can say, this is how many CDLs we've got operating in this borough, and this is the name of them and this is how they're operating, because it is such a fluid element. What I can say is that it is much lower than other areas, and sometimes CDL is often kind of mixed up with local drug lines as well. So you'll have local dealers who will potentially be exploiting younger people and children to deal their drugs locally. And then you'll also have the county drugs lines that are coming in and operating at that level. But it's still child exploitation, and we across the partnership through the MRAC are looking to tackle both of those elements of that. It isn't something that is prevalent, but we do work hard to understand that at the earliest opportunity. I also mentioned earlier about the violence reduction unit work that we're doing. Myself and Adam Davies, for the assistant director from Children's Social Care, are co-chairs of our serious violence strategic work, where we're looking to get that plan in place to include YACHT, as well as Kelly Scott, who chairs MRAC, along with my colleague as well, to see what we can do to do that preventative work as well, to protect those children from county drugs lines.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Narinder, Felicity. Before I ask if there's any more questions from the floor, I'd just like to ask Felicity, is there anything that you want to say at this point in regards to the Community Safety Partnership, but also from a police Woking Borough point of view, as to what your thoughts and relationships and the working that you do with the borough and the other authorities around us as well? Just to get your thoughts as well, because we've heard a lot of things on paper and a lot of response tonight, but I'd actually like to get your thinking.
Yeah, thank you. It has been a really interesting year for everyone in every aspect of our work and our lives, and so it's difficult to quite really quantify the impact that we've had from the CSP. From my point of view, I've been chairing the CSP over the last year. I've been hugely impressed, as always, with the support that Narinder provides me and the rest of the partnership to get our business done. I think the addition of Simon Price coming along as well has also enhanced how I've been able to operate around the CSP. So I hope that the borough feels more confident about the mechanisms we have there. We have our subgroups, and again, there are many of them, and moving forward, we need to just look to see how we can better support them. We've got a lot of different agencies who are coming together around that, and I think there is still room for improvement upon some of those subgroups, not because of the people around the table, but maybe for us just to be a little bit more organised and coordinating the work that needs to be done there. With that in mind, Simon and I are going to be co-chairing an interim CSP meeting just to bring that together. So I think that we are in a good place. We do need still to kind of push on it. We have a fair few partners around the table at the main CSP meeting, but the contributions from all the agencies aren't necessarily there. So I think that we still need to work out how we can make it more relevant for some of the other partners, third sector and other criminal justice partners such as probation. So yeah, that's my views.
Thank you. That's interesting. Shahid, I can see that you're indicating.
Thank you, Chair. My question is regarding the data sharing of multi-agencies. Obviously, if you're going to be effective in preventing crime and all the other things which we have talked about, the effective sharing of the data is absolutely key to that, the intelligence. Are you both satisfied and to see that the sharing of the data is being done in a timely fashion and is effective? Or do you think there could be some improvements there?
If I begin, if I may, Chair, I think Thames Valley Police has a lot of data which we can share around crime, and we share the elements which we believe is useful for the CSP and for Narinder's team. There is that opportunity to request additional data from us around certain data sets, which is done in a fairly timely manner. But there is a quarterly kind of transfer of data around particular crime types to assist the CSP understanding the crime what the crime looks like. The really exciting bit of work that we're doing now is the violence reduction data, dashboard, where we're taking data from the police and we are looking to bring in local authority data as well. So Thames Valley Police works with 9 different authorities, Woking Borough being one of them. So we are looking to the local authority to allow permission and to share that information, so we're able to then provide a greater dashboard which you will be able to access with your own licenses to see what that violence picture looks like, individuals that are involved, locations, different types of risks, and then in the future we will be looking to see if we can get health data on board as well, such as emergency room admissions for stab wounds, for example. So there is a real good opportunity. We do need we're waiting for that to be looked at by yourselves, but that's my point of view. Narinder will probably have some other things to add as well.
Yeah, thank you. Just to add to that, really, we have got really good data sharing arrangements in place in terms of understanding both our short, medium and long-term trends. So we've got a really good process and the ability to do that, which is very, very good. As Felicity's said, we are developing lots more new and innovative data sets and a dashboard to have a look more further and overlay some of this data, because the interesting part is sometimes when you overlay data, you can see trends and emerging issues actually, which you might anecdotally know is correct, but once you put the data together, it gives you an absolute complete picture of information, which allows you then to make sure that some of the resources that you're implementing and the projects that you're implementing are definitely being put towards the right areas and in the right places, in the right schools, or in the right locations across the borough. So absolutely, in terms of data, we are doing very well, but there's always improvements that we're constantly always looking to improve ourselves and improve the work that we're undertaking, and part of that is the data picture. Secondary to add to that is probably the operational data. So where there is a need, like Felicity's already outlined, you know, we are proportionate and timely in sharing our information amongst the frontline officers where incidents and issues are happening either real time or you know, close to real time, so that we can react, or we can come together as an agency and as a partnership to deal with some of those issues as well. So really good practices going on, but always constantly having a look at how we can continue to improve things so that we stay ahead of the game and stay good and excellent working as a partnership. So we're not sort of reliant upon old trends or old data, really. We're constantly having a look at renewed new issues and concerns that are coming forward and highlighted in the data.
Chair, can I follow that another question?
Yes.
Just back up on what you just said. You mentioned, I think there was mentioned 2 things. You answered one question. I just want to make sure that the data which is being shared is in real time. I understand from the question that yes. If not, if you can confirm that. Secondly, are there any specific projects which are going on at the moment? You talked about overlaying of data, and I absolutely agree that is a key to that. You can't look at the data in isolation. It has to be overlaid and merged with multiple data sets to really get a real picture. Are there any specific projects which are being undertaken at the moment, and are there any timelines associated with that? And will that data be shared across the council and also in public domain as well?
If you'd like me to answer that one.
Go for it.
The data isn't shared real time from Thames Valley Police to Woking Borough. The project we were talking about with the violence reduction dashboard, which will be layered, that will be real time. It will be available to Wokingham Borough for those who hold licenses. It won't be open for the public domain because it contains personal information, and it should be available within 6 months' time if it is signed up for.
Simon, I can also see you're indicating.
Thank you, Chair. I think COVID has shown us what good data really means and how we can really use it to the benefit of our residents. I think over the next 6 or 7 months, we will be reviewing the dashboards and the data we're using. And I would see us coming out of this financial year in a much better position in a data, real live data, as we can acquire it, but also the themes and trends. So all I can say is I've been involved in the COVID work, and if we do as good as we have done with the COVID reporting and the COVID intelligence, then we'll be going a long way to improving this work. So it's work in progress, Shahid, and I'd like to make a real impact in this financial year.
Okay, thank you for that. Clive, you indicated you had another question.
Yeah, thank you, Guy. I've just got a couple more. Substance misuse, that's something that has increased in Woking. Cannabis, the use of cannabis has, I think, increased. Is there anything that can be done in schools to help to reduce this? And do we still send into schools police officers to educate teenagers that they should not be trying to take these substances?
Yeah, happy to take that. So we, in terms of substance misuse, as I touched on earlier, so as part of the new substance misuse contract, we do have this offer for children and young people. As part of that will be increased education within schools around the substance misuse agenda, and also around the healthy living agenda in terms of drug and alcohol misuse around young people. So we've definitely seen that.
Oh, no. Apologies, we had a technical issue in the room here. We just lost the audio. One moment, please. No, you can now keep talking there, and we just, it's redialed, but apologies.
No problem. I was just saying, so substance misuse as part of the new contract, we have an offer for young people, which definitely includes going into schools by the substance misuse provider as part of that offer. We do work closely with our colleagues and police colleagues as well in terms of substance misuse and directing individuals into schools. And I'm sure Felicity will be able to detail a little bit more about that. But in terms of increased cannabis use, it's certainly something that was identified when we undertook the needs assessments of substance misuse, and has been identified as an increase nationally as well as locally. So this isn't, I have to highlight, isn't a local trend, the increase in cannabis use. It is actually a national increase. So we've seen nationally the use of cannabis amongst young people increasing steadily for several years, and that has played out locally as well as nationally, hence sort of our recognition of this trend and increasing our offer in schools to capture young people in terms of talking to them and educating them not only about healthy lifestyles and the effects of cannabis use, but also around possible penalties and what it means in terms of a possession offence that they may be picked up by police colleagues or other educational elements of that.
Here comes Felicity.
Apologies. So we have for every school, every junior school, a police community safety officer is linked to that school. For every secondary school, there is a police constable that is linked, and they are available to deal with any particular issue that the school has and wants to discuss topics on. There isn't any particular theme that we are going in to go and talk just about drugs, because our themes are more on knife crime and exploitation and having discussions around that. And of course, last year has been more challenging than usual on it. When there are any drug offences that take place on a school, it will be for them to make a decision as to whether they want to get the police involved, and we go through the Safer Schools partnership approach, because although crimes take place, we don't want to criminalise our young people, and we want to make sure that we get the best opportunity to divert them away from that. So we are often led also by the schools around that. So if there's a head teacher who's concerned about any particular theme that is going on in their particular school, then they will make contact with us and we will respond accordingly.
Okay, thanks very much. You just mentioned knife crime, and the new community safety strategy is hoping that we're going to reduce the number of crimes that involve knives. It's down as I think one of our aims, age 32. How do you think we will achieve that?
So as I've mentioned earlier, we have the new strategic partnership around serious violence and knife crime, which also includes exploitation. That is about making sure that the resources that we have are aware of some of the issues and signposting potentials around identifying those children who are at risk. For example, those who are temporarily excluded or permanently excluded from schools, those who have been identified as potentially possessing a knife. So we will have ways of understanding who to target and have concerns around, and then where we should be looking to put those interventions. And I know the youth offending team are looking to see what more work they can be doing there. We'll see what other provisions might be needed and where we can divert some of our existing resources. And also we will, if we are concerned that that risk is getting to the heightened level, they will be managed at the multi-agency meeting around missing and exploitation, MRAG, so that we can problem solve and get our expert colleagues to see what they can do to try and reduce that risk of knife crime.
Thanks very much. We've got some very good neighbourhood action groups around the borough. Are there some areas of the borough that you think that could do with a neighbourhood action group? But they haven't got one at the moment.
From my point of view, I must confess I don't know where all the neighbourhood action groups are. So if there are gaps, then we are more than happy to help facilitate them. Narinder, I don't know if you are aware.
Yes, just to add to that, I think it's neighbourhood action groups are. We've been reviewing them and we have feedback from them very regularly. So at our 6 weekly problem solving tasking group, one of the set agenda items is to receive a report back from neighbourhood action groups to keep a very close and watchful eye on some of the concerns that are in the neighbourhood. As Felicity says, really, we can happily support, together with our localities colleagues who are the key representatives, together with officers, neighbourhood officers, Felicity's officers on the ground for where they are. So if there are any gaps identified, we'd be keen to hear what they are or how they could either get involved with the nearest group. People can get involved, or we can help facilitate, like we have done in one of the areas at least over the last 12 months, to set up a new group that is fit for the local needs.
Okay, thanks very much. And just a final comment. There's been roughly 100 million of cuts over the last 6 years. And these must have made a significant impact on on how we've been able to deal with crime, and yet crime numbers have gone down, both of them. And I think Felicity and her team should be congratulated on doing that. And hopefully you'll be able to keep it up over the next 12 months. And when we see you again next year, you'll be giving us some more good news with further improvements forward to that.
Thank you. That's very kind. We will try our best.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask one quick question before I go back to Sam, because I saw he's indicating again. And this may not be information that is to hand, and it might be slightly out of the purview here, but it's more around. I'm just going to ask around 2 points, which is the violence with injury statistics and also the racially or religiously aggravated crimes. Now, those are some numbers that have basically remained steady or increased slightly. However, my question is how many actually went through to a prosecution case, as it were, and how many were potentially dropped? Now, this may not be something that is under the purview because it is handing over to the CPS and everything, but effectively, how many were actually handed over to the Crown Prosecution Service and things like that, simply because it's all well and good having these crimes happening, but it's a case of what is the quantity that are actually going through to trial, penalty, etc., etc. I think it's probably Felicity that needs to answer that one.
Yeah, our violence within injury investigations improved significantly, particularly around domestic abuse. We had a 49% increase in domestic abuse outcomes last year. That's the whole of my area, which includes Bracknell, so I can't tell you specifically for Wokingham, but we put a real injection of energy, particularly around domestic abuse. So that has seen an increase. I can't give you the exact figure for Wokingham Borough, and also I can't tell you for those crimes which kind of happened outside of the home, because I don't have it to hand at this time. Race crime, the numbers are small, but it has been on the increase. It is a difficult crime sometimes to detect and because sometimes it's said in the street and we haven't been able to identify the perpetrator, but when it's a neighbourhood issue, then we are of course able to proceed much more easily around that. Some of those crimes will be dealt with maybe out of court as opposed to going through to a prosecution. It depends on the severity of it. However, having looked at the race hate crime, we are satisfied that they are not of a severe nature around the kind of physical harm, but of course every single race hate crime is one too many. But all I'm saying is it's not a grievous bodily harm or an actual bodily harm. They're more public order and lower level on that criminal scale. But we are looking to do some additional work, Thames Valley Police and Wokingham Borough, to tackle race hate crime in particular. And I'm really pleased that we're making some progress over the last 6 months with that.
Thank you. That's good to hear, because that was one area of my concern, was the fact that the number of times I've heard something, and this goes back many years, but it's basically going down the street and suddenly someone rolls down a window as they're driving by the car and starts yelling at you. That's something that was springing to mind as an example. But it's very difficult to catch the perpetrator, as it were, but it would still be recorded as a crime. So I'm glad to hear that is at least.
Chair, if I may make an additional comment.
Yep.
It's just the fact that actually race hate crime, if it were to increase, it would be a good thing from my point of view. I would want more people to come forward to have confidence to say that they have been a victim of race hate crime, and give the police the opportunity to hold that perpetrator to account. So if we're able to be successful in the plans that we have to implement across the borough, to give people the confidence that we are here to support them, then I would hope to see that actually race hate crime is on an increase next year. So I suppose I'm just preparing you for that, because at the moment it's so underreported, and sadly so many people have to put up with racial abuse on a regular basis, which is completely unacceptable.
100% agreed. I'm very glad to hear that, because If we take my example on the car incident, the more people who suffer from that particular individual and get yelled at, the more people report it. Eventually, the guy or girl will get caught, and because people are identifying the car. Okay, Sam, and I think we're going to need to move on to another item to go a longer time for this.
So my question is, since lockdown, more and more residents are at home, are going on walks locally. This has led to an increased footfall in the local area. Are the police and PCs and PCSOs seeing an increase in engagement with the PCSOs and local police? And has this led to an increase in, local intelligence gathering from local residents and just general increase in engagement from residents?
I'll take that one. The last year was really difficult for our neighbourhood policing because of how we had to reduce our capacity to keep us COVID safe and to be able to respond to our 101 and 999 calls. Our neighbourhood response was reduced slightly. So my colleagues, Chief Inspector Helen Kenny and Jerusha Lysett-Jones, who is the Neighbourhood Inspector for Wokingham Borough, and now looking at the plans for reforming our teams, that they are back working, but actually from the beginning of August, we are restructuring to have 2 neighbourhood teams, which are bigger in size, as well as 1 problem-solving team. We're rehashing kind of the makeup of how they are. The 2 bigger teams are there predominantly to engage with our community, and we've given a real good steer to make sure that that's effective communication, effective engagement to first of all, give people the confidence that the police are here to serve them and their community, and also to gather that intelligence to understand what's there and have a real focus on prevention. So moving forward, I think hopefully you'll be able to see that change. There's also a national policing framework which is being developed by the National Police Chief Council, and we've been working on that over the last 6 months to make sure that we understand what is required around that. And again, from the beginning of August, that will take much better shape. I've shared that with colleagues from Wokingham Borough to make sure that the localities and neighbourhood policing can work much more effectively in partnership.
Thank you, Felicity.
Chair, can I ask a quick question regarding the previous one regarding racial aggravated crimes?
Please, and then I saw Bill indicated he wanted to say something, and then we'll move on.
Very quick one. Felicity, thank you very much for mentioning. I mean, obviously the numbers have gone up. I know it's 21%, it says in the figures, and real time 16%. You mentioned the numbers actually are small, but nevertheless, we know that they have a huge impact on those individuals and their families. The confidence levels goes down. They're reluctant to go out, afraid to go out, and also the economic, impacts the whole of their life and also the family as well. So even though the numbers may be small, but actually, the impact is huge. That's number one. So you can, another thing is regarding getting the more people coming forward. Only way we'll get people coming forward is if they have the confidence that the police will actually take them seriously, and issues have been resolved, and they've been, people have been caught and punished, and those information are shared and communicated in the public as well. That this is what the case happened, this is what police did, and this is what the outcome was. And that sharing of that information in the public domain is like Rachel said, it will give them the more confidence to actually move forward and report. If they don't see that, then I'm afraid they'll be reluctant to actually report as well. So I think that's the very key thing.
Thank you. I agree with all of your comments.
Okay, thank you, Bill.
Thank you. I'd just like to say a big thank you to everybody in the partnership for producing such a great report, and also for being responsible for the reduction in so many crimes within the borough. I think we start off at a low base compared to the national averages, so it's very encouraging to see how we're performing. But I always feel we can't be complacent, and we always have to look for improvements even on these figures. And I think it just needs to be sort of mentioned that we are looking in many ways to improve our services that we offer to our residents. As obviously the members will know, that come April the 1st, we will be bringing public protection back into our in-house. We've had the benefits of working with the Joint Public Protection Partnership with Bracknell Forest and West Berks. And, you know, we've had a very good experience with them, but we feel that there's many areas in which we can benefit our residents even more. For example, you know, when we've talked about antisocial behaviour, we know that there's areas where we can improve how we deal with it and how we can deal with it more effectively, offering a 24/7 cover from operatives in the field who can actually respond to cases let's say, more efficiently. And I think also we need to, as a borough, perhaps engage ourselves more with our town councils and with our parish councils, where there's local experience. And in fact, even with ward members, let's forget the ward members who have local knowledge. And I think this is all areas where we can perhaps improve our service. But let me say, the whole reason for bringing public protection back into Wokingham is to offer our residents a far better service and be the benefit of all. And that's it. That's the main reason. So I hope that next year, when after April the 1st, we'll see even greater reductions in these figures. So I just wanted to point those points out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. Okay, I think we'll wrap up there, but we'll see you all. We'll see most of you again throughout the year, and going into March next year, when we have everyone back for a emergency services chat, for the lack of a better description right now. But Narinda, and to everyone else in the Community Safety Partnership, I think it's on behalf of the committee to say thank you. It's been a challenging year. It's been a very good and comprehensive report. I hope there's been some good feedback and questions for you to use in the format going forward, and how we can help. And other than a few actions, yeah, thank you very much. And you may go and enjoy the rest of your evenings, unless you need it for later on. But Felicity especially, thank you very much for attending this evening. Your interventions were very, very useful, and you asked quite a few questions to great detail. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you. Good evening.
All right. Moving on, we've got the Communities Insight and Change Directorate priorities. Who's taking that again? Is it Bill? Oh, Keely's up there. Excellent. Go ahead and fire away, Keely.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair. Good evening, everyone. For those of you who I haven't had a chance yet to meet, let me just introduce myself. My name is Keely Clements. I'm the Director of Communities Insight and Change. And just before I turn to the document that you'll have in front of you, and I promise I won't talk to it line by line, but I thought it might be beneficial if I just quickly outline that the Communities Insight and Change Directorate was created March 2020. And I joined the council May last year. And the purpose of that directorate, really created by the CEO and with guidance from the leader of the council, is very much predicated around the customer and trying to bring some of our central services, if you like, things that touch the organisation across the piece, such as IT, bringing that together all in one remit. So I have 5 areas under my area of responsibility, which I'll talk to just in a second. So I have IT, digital and change. I have the customer piece, so customer services and all that goes with that. I have HR, which is obviously our internal people, which is fantastic. I look after the the communication, engagement and marketing team. So that's obviously how we talk to our customers. And I also look after the neighbourhood and communities team, who you've just heard from here today with Narinda and Simon. So I'm conscious of the timer, but let me talk through how my priorities really for the next year and in each of those areas. And then I'm sure you'll be keen to ask me a fair few questions. So as you well know, WBC, the corporate plan, has 6 strategic themes, of which the CIC directorate, my directorate, really plays strongly into 2 of those. First and foremost, the safe and strong communities strategic theme, but particularly changing the way we work for you. That's a really important one for my area. So if now I sort of just talk sort of at a high level to the document that you have in front of you, and I'll just go through it as read really. But if I talk about IT, the priorities really for the next 12 months, and particularly around maintaining and protecting the estate. For those of you who may have spotted in the news last year, there was a London Borough Council that suffered quite a severe cyber attack. And we have certainly had something similar December last year, and we got through that safely, which was fantastic. But not only is it about maintaining what we have today, it's also about creating the building blocks to get better data. And it was great to hear Shahid talk to that earlier, actually, in terms of how do we pull the data together. The council does have a lot of data. It's held in lots of disparate places, and we need to start working out how we can rationalise that and bring that together in one place so we can use that insight to help us make more informed decisions and get the right outcomes for our customers. Also on the IT side, they very much will help when we start looking at the sort of customer journey. Some of the things I'll be doing under the customer area in my directorate, helping trying to, where possible and where appropriate, automate some of those processes to make us easier to use, easier to do business with, remove customer pain points and friction points, and hopefully enable our customers to get the things done they need to in the way they wish to, through whichever channel that may be. Also, another area of the digital and change priorities for me is around the project management discipline. So the IT and change area, they also look after our project management, if you like, office, and they help the group, the organisation, maintain change and bring change to fruition, whether they're working with the adults or children's services through the continuous improvement programme or other various change projects that we have on stocks to help us deliver our corporate delivery plan. And what's really important there is just getting that discipline and helping, I guess, the broader group bring that sort of single-minded focus in delivery and making sure that we're also getting all the full benefits realisation. So it's that corporate rigour, if you like, that I also hope to help bring through the IT and change piece. So that's kind of the IT bits. I appreciate you'll have more in your pack that I'm sure you will have read, but for me, that's really is such a key role for them, other than keeping the show on the road, as they say, just making sure that we're continually advancing our applications, our data sets, and how we can access insight, and just trying to help bring the group together for the greater good. If I turn now to the customer side of things, so I am in the process of restructuring, I guess, for want of a better phrase, to create a customer and insight area within my directorate. And that will very much be about owning that voice of the customer and making sure that we really understand what it is customers are trying to do when they interact with us, and that we're actually listening on all fronts in order to make it easier to do whatever it is the customer is trying to achieve. And that may be us looking at our customer journeys from an end-to-end perspective and making sure that that customer experience is second to none across the organisation. I hope some of you will, well, I hope I'm not talking out of turn, but I'm sure a few of you will know that sometimes we let ourselves down. We can be absolute brilliant islands of expertise within different directorates, but sometimes when we have to have that interplay across two or three, that's when things tend to fall between two stools. And that's not fault, that's just, we just need to get a bit tighter in making sure that we're getting those handoffs really well. We've had some really good progress in that, and I hope to build out again this year around GovMetrics. And that's something we implemented February, March time. And that really is genuinely, for the first time ever, the voice of the customer. So it's us asking customers, how satisfied were you with X or Y that you've been trying to do, or with the service that you have received, perhaps whether it's waste or whether it's trying to order a blue badge online. What's your honest opinion? Good, the bad and the ugly, and an opportunity also to give us some feedback, some free formatted text, just to really be clear and explicit about how they're experiencing how we deliver our services. And that's been extremely insightful and helpful. Now we're only building our base of data on that as we speak, so we need to get to a baseline where we understand what looks like corporate. But just to give you a great example, you know, we had issued a service online, and one of the little URLs was not working properly. And within 2 or 3 minutes of customers telling us this, we were able to then go away and fix that immediately, which is fantastic, because previously, before having that facility, we might not have known that until we'd got almost to a complaint stage, and that could have been a couple of days after the release. And obviously that, you know, that's quite a few customers who had been unhappy in between. So there's some great work happening in the customer area. And the other thing that, off the back of making sure you're listening to the customer, what are you going to do about it to make things better? And that's why I'm really pushing hard to drive customer experience forums and a better handling of customer complaints. Back to my point a second ago, when we have to deal with things cross-council, which is the right thing to do, we need to make sure that we never knowingly let anyone fail, and that actually the right outcome is what we go back to the customer with. And it needs to be a complete answer, not this is my answer for my bit, and now I shall pass you off to somebody else to answer for theirs. It's about making sure that we're looking at it from our customers' shoes, really, and their perspective. So there's some great work that I'm hoping to continue throughout this year. And then if I turn to HR, what's another good positive is I have an interim HR assistant director joining next Monday, which is fantastic. And that will help to also drive, I'm very keen to help try and build our HR area, just to give, again, more rigour and more assurance for the wider group, because we need to make sure that we are supporting everybody with all their line management responsibilities, performance management, and all of those areas that really, you know, HR is quite a heavy lifting BAU area, if you forgive that phrase. But one of the other things that I'm really keen to do is about increasing and optimizing people performance across the organisation. And one of the projects we've already initiated, and we will continue to roll this out this year, is around performance management and bringing to bear the concept of talking to our colleagues around not only what you do and how you not what you do and how you do it, but actually the behavioural side as well. So those two pieces, that what and how, go together to help make more of a rounded conversation and enable people to fully develop and get the feedback they need to go from good to great. So that's the HR piece. We're obviously quite heavily involved as well on the HR front with PPP, which Bill mentioned earlier, and that's just helping shape the roles, the 2P process, all that goes with that. So there's quite a lot on the agenda for that team. And then with regards to communications, engagement, marketing team, we are looking to continue to optimise how we talk to our customers through our consultations. And this is something I really, again, want to build out as I bring in the AD for Customer and Insight, which hopefully will be in the next month or so. And I'm really keen to start building out how we engage with customers, whether we're doing that through focus groups, lean-ins, customer juries, etc. And this is something that an area really excites me, because I think it is so important to make sure that we are here for our residents and making sure we really understand what matters to them, because then that's how we can create our propositions, our services and our responses to make sure that we're really tailoring to what it is our customers need. Ideally, what would be fantastic is through insights, is to get to a place where we can actually create personas for those of you who've ever worked in a CX environment before. But this is really about understanding customers in a greater detail to allow us to tailor some of the things that we say and do to certain types of customers. So really getting under the skin of that would be a really fantastic outcome. And we need to continue building that this year. And then finally, because I do want to pause for breath so you guys can question me, but the neighbourhood and communities team run by Simon Price, you've just heard the discussions around the domestic abuse and the community safety partnership strategy. You know, we want to relentlessly pursue all of those elements of work and make sure that we're really delivering what we've just set out and committed to earlier. So I won't repeat, other than to say that, you know, it's got my full backing and support, and we're just really, really keen to make a difference. But also then on the housing piece, there's quite a bit of work to do there, as you know, we've referenced again earlier in the meeting around COVID and the impact of that. And we really need to work through how that will impact our housing service, if you like, in terms of the ending of the all-in policy, which we know will materialise, and we will see some more folk that we need to rehome, but also the ending of the eviction ban. That will have to play out. And again, we are expecting to see a form of uptick. but also then about maintaining the customer satisfaction level that Simon has worked so hard to maintain as part of running the housing portfolio, and just making sure that our stock is fit for purpose, and actually we're really supporting our residents and tenants in all the best ways we can. And then finally, the last bit of that area, probably to reference very quickly, but very importantly, is our community engagement side, our localities team as it's known. And that's really about the work in the community and how we are making sure that we're visible, we really understand those that we're working with. And Bill made a really great comment, which I totally endorse earlier, about doing more work with the town and parish councils. And that's something I'm really keen, and I know Simon's really keen to further this year. And so we want to make sure that we get that right, and we're really understanding each of those wards as individuals, not a collective. And that is my ask of the team. So that's really important. And then the last piece, but not least, is obviously the library's proposition, and looking to make sure that we can reopen those safely, but also build that proposition and that offer to our residents and customers in a way that's perhaps slightly more future-proofed, and in a way that's safe and appropriate going forward. So they're the areas that at a very high level are the priorities for the next 12 months. It's very much predicated around getting our customers to love us, I think, for want of a better phrase. And all of the teams under my directorate are really clear that that is our mandate, and we're really working hard internally as well as externally to try and bring some of those pieces listed in the documentation you have in front of you to bear. So Chair, I'll pause there if that's okay, and I'm willing to answer any questions.
Thank you, Keely. There we go. Background noise. Please, members, if you've got questions, please put your hands now. I'll go in order and sort them up. Alison, Sam, and Clive, and Shirley. I see your hand at the back. Okay. So Alison first.
Good evening, Keely. I wanted to ask some questions about social housing. I think this is fantastic to have a bold, ambitious aim to increase satisfaction to 90%. So I'd like to know, what is it right now? Second question is looking at, the preparations for the additional homeless, sadly, in the borough. That I think it's very wise to be expecting that due to the end of the eviction ban. But how are we preparing? What's the strategy that you're putting in place? And then thirdly, looking at strategic use of the housing revenue account, this mentions the 145 project. Could you expand on what that is for us, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. So I've asked Simon to... Oh, wonderful. Simon, would you be so kind?
Okay, so satisfaction of the council tenants in our borough. I think we started off at a low point of about 76% a number of years ago. We are just below 90%. I think the last report was about 88%. So I would suggest satisfaction. It's been a long job with our tenants, but we are looking to continue that journey. We have a great relationship with our tenants, our involved tenants, and we're looking to build on that in future years. So satisfaction, I would suggest many landlords around us would want those satisfaction figures, but we're looking to build on them. So that's where we are with current satisfaction. Homelessness. So as you know, last March, government asked us to implement the all-in policy, which meant we have brought in I believe it's over 70 rough sleepers. We've rehoused a number of them. One has returned to the streets and we're still working with that person. But for me, the end of the eviction ban is now our biggest issue. We have a number of households who have come to us over the last year to say they've been given notice by their landlords. We as a local authority have said, OK, we want to work with those landlords on an individual basis to try and keep that accommodation. But we know what will happen is, as the courts open up, many landlords are looking to dispose due to changes of financial circumstances. So I believe we will see an increase in homelessness. I don't know the number, Alison, but I do know we've got a queuing system already, and we're trying to work with families on an individual basis. So I think for us, it's going to be around understanding what our total funding is from government this year, because we've got a commitment from our landlord, our AHIG group, which is a committee of the council, to say they don't want anyone put back on the streets. I think we just need to review that position in light of funding from government and the commitment from council, and I think we'll have a better understanding over the next 3 or 4 months. The courts aren't up and running yet, so there will be another delay, I believe, in the number of evictions coming through, because the courts are just not set up to undertake all the cases they've got in their queue. So I see there being a slight, there will be, I think, another 3-4 months of where we're able to hold people where they are, and then that's when we will have an issue. Just on resources, I think it's helpful to let you know that we have seen an increase in funding in some areas for government from this year, and we've allocated another 2 officers. We're recruiting another 2 officers to assist our current team, who are really struggling, I would suggest, under the workloads. So we bolstered that team to assist in the homelessness area, and we will do further if required. I think we all need to know that. Sorry, Alison, what was your third point?
I was asking about what is 145 project in the strategic housing revenue.
Okay, so basically, as you know, we have some local housing companies that the council owns. We also have a commercial arm that Bernie Pitch's team work on, and you've seen the developments across in Elmsfield and others where Bernie's team have been involved. So this is about unlocking the potential from the housing revenue account to contribute to the 145 project. About 18 months ago, the housing revenue account borrowing cap was removed, which was really helpful. But with the impact of COVID, we haven't moved as quickly as we would like. But now I'm working with strategic colleagues to understand what the borrowing capacity and what the headroom the HRA can afford to contribute to the 145 project. Apologies. So the 145 project is a strategic project that has the housing companies, ourselves. Alison, I'm looking forward to coming back to council at some point to say the housing revenue account is going to enter into the Section 106 market, where we buy properties direct from the developers. We want to regenerate where we find the housing is such a condition that we feel that we need to. And we also want to buy speculatively, obviously in lines with procurement and our council regulations, to maybe go out into the market and buy something off plan. This is all to be agreed with our strategic colleagues because they're leading this project. But I believe the HRA can increase in its size over the coming years and release some real financial muscle into this work.
That's great. It's all very good to hear, Simon. Thank you for the work that you and your department are doing. Every resident in our borough, deserves to have a great home and somewhere, that they can call home and feel very, very happy there.
I think the word affordable is important, Alison.
Well, yeah, everybody needs a home, and that necessitates that we have a percentage that are affordable.
Yeah.
I'll go to Sam, but can everyone appreciate the enthusiasm that Simon delivered that in? Because that's the sort of response we want, is that enthusiasm, that energy and that drive, especially at approaching 9 o'clock at night. So Simon, whatever you're having, can I have one please as well?
Hi, so my question... Sorry, my question's for Keely. So first of all, well done on the impact you're having on the insight side. Really great to hear the question, the answer around how a customer made a complaint around a broken URL and that was changed in minutes. I think that's brilliant. My specific question was, what is the council doing in relation to improving the customer experience, particularly with regards to people making a request for, let's say, for example, you log on to a portal, you make a request to repair a pothole, maybe a broken manhole. Are they looking at ways where a customer could go on, log onto the portal to actually track what's happening with their case that they've submitted rather than it disappearing into a black hole?
Sure. And thanks, Sam, for the question. So I think there's two pieces there. So yeah, customer experience is really important. And as that area starts to develop, and to be fair, I haven't yet appointed the customer and insight AD. That is the next job to do. That's a really important part. That customer journey mapping and fixing some of those things from a customer perspective is really important. What you've just talked about there is sort of workflow tracking. So once somebody has said, can something happen? How does that track through? That's something that we will probably look at in the round, but that's probably more in the sort of medium term rather than the short term. I think where I'd be very keen to focus is where we have the most customer pain points, really. So we already know as a council that there are 5 or 6 areas where customers perhaps have more to say on certain services. And it's some of those journeys that we will be looking to map and fix in the shorter term, sort of on a quick win basis, I guess, for want of a better phrase. But your point there, Sam, it's not lost. And it is something that I would like to get better at. But I also think I would throw into the mix, actually, there's something around the culture of the council, and from an HR perspective, how do we drive some of that performance management to not knowingly let other people fail, and equally not knowingly let a customer down. So if a customer asks you to do something, I do find it strange if a colleague then doesn't respond to that or feels it's okay not to respond to that. So with my HR hat on, and culturally, I think there's something else there as well that you've mentioned. So I think I know I haven't answered it absolutely on the money there, Sam, forgive me, but I think there's a couple of elements that we need to tackle as we build that part of my business out.
Thanks, Keely. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it'd be such a great thing if, a lot of us are judged on the success of, a resident goes on, submits a query, and if they could track it or see even if, it's currently sat at this stage or now it's moved to this stage, I think that'd be brilliant.
What I should probably add, actually, Sam, forgive me, is that we are looking at the website piece, and we have recently hired, for any of you who are digitally minded, a UX UI specialist, which is user experience, user interface person, who will be looking at it with the absolute premise that every click kills. So what are the things that customers are trying to do? Which bits of the website are they using most and least? And therefore, how can we re-engineer that, I guess, in a cost-effective way to help the customer achieve the jobs to be done in terms of what they're trying to get done through that website. As you guys know, if you've used it, there are a few things that, it stops short on certain aspects that we would like to really remediate sooner rather than later.
Thanks, Keely.
Thank you. Anne?
Good evening. So can I ask you, on page 37, you refer to developing the Graduate Academy at Woking Borough. Could you just explain what that is, please?
So there's a couple of elements there, Anne, and good evening, by the way. We have a cohort of graduates that we've taken in, and they sit currently under our change management function with the basis of a rotation around the organisation, doing sort of 2-3 month placements to help them get a really good feel for the council and all its component parts. So by rotating them and helping and getting them to support a directorate with its change programs or initiatives, it really does help build that graduates' breadth and depth of knowledge of a council organisation. And these, sorry, I should say that this cohort has come from the local government network as well. So they are graduates that have specified it, in sort of local authority. That's where they see their careers blossoming, which is fantastic. Now, I have actually come from private sector, and I am used to there being a graduate scheme on a bigger scale, I guess, run out of typically the HR function, where you take in graduates from whichever university or area. So it could carry on being the LGN. That'd be fantastic. We'll take more. And then we try to help them build their careers and really see an opportunity to succeed. And it's another talent pool, if you like, for the council to help grow your own and actually promote throughout the organisation. So it's just a fantastic way to get some really good calibre people in. And help develop them, and they also in turn help develop others around them, because absolutely they do have some amazing skill sets, some of the people that I've had the luck to interact with.
Okay, thanks very much. Our next question is the next page. It's about the insight strategy. Ooh.
Yep.
Oh, you're still there.
I'm still here.
Can't see you. Anyway, just could you explain what insight is, please?
Sure. So there's a difference between, and forgive me if this is very rudimentary, but there's a difference between data and insight. Obviously, you could have 2 data points, and a year ago you were at 10, and today you're at 20. But that doesn't actually contextualize or give you the what's really going on underneath the surface. And actually, we had some of that debate earlier around some of the CSP numbers, didn't we? Around why things have changed, and has it been COVID, or are there other reasons for perhaps the burglary rates was a good example of that. Insight is something we need to get to a place as a council, in my humble opinion, where we build up our data sets. We try to connect those in a way that actually helps us drive a so what, and it's so what that is the insight, and it's that so what that then I would like us to be able to feed that back into the organisation for people who are managing their services, propositions, products, etc., to be able to make some really good informed decisions around what that insight's telling them, and therefore what might be the best next step for their service or how they're going to interact with the customer next. And it would be really fantastic. And I'm setting myself a high bar here, but if we got to a point where then it really also helped us understand and really tailor where we put our resources. You know, our money is very finite, absolutely, but so are our people. We have 1,250 colleagues in the organisation who, I mean, this month alone have put in an extraordinary amount of effort with surge testing and vaccination pieces, which does take them off their substantive role at that period of time. So, you know, they are an enormous asset to the organisation, and we need to make sure that not only are we deploying our finances in the right way, but also our resources, which is another huge asset, in a way that really gets the best, and I mean this in a good way, but value for money and the right outcome for the customer. And hopefully it will make us give us a sharper response and a better outcome.
Okay, thanks very much. I've got another question. It's sorry. Yeah, page 42. It's about investigation and enforcement of fly tipping.
Sure.
Do you know, sorry? I'll say something. Could you sort of describe any developments with investigating fly tipping?
Sure. And Simon, I know you're still on the call, so you might need to step in and keep me on the straight and narrow here, but we have been doing a lot of work in that area, and it has been improving. Absolutely, COVID has surprisingly and disappointingly actually had an impact, because where people weren't able to go to the tip, they, for some odd reason, felt that it was therefore appropriate to dispose of things in a different way. And I know that we have plans in place to continue to enforce. And we did and I don't know if you saw this, Anne, but we did a really big zero tolerance push around Christmas, where we did a lot of comms to that effect, and actually it did make a difference in the numbers. But I don't know, Simon, if you'd like to build on that.
Yeah, so as we know, we have seen an increase in fly tipping in COVID, and for April we did see another, I think, 30% increase on last year's figures. So I think for me, we've implemented some additional cameras out in the borough. The team are investigating fly tips where they can, but I do need to acknowledge what Keely has just said. Some officers have been taken off this work in recent weeks to concentrate on surge in vaccinations. However, we do have a working group that meets every month, and we are looking in the next couple of months to get back into where police can stop vehicles with our colleagues and then check that those vehicles have actually got the right licenses to dump waste. So that's a bit, so it's just not about finding waste that's already dumped. It's about being proactive and actually checking vehicles that are coming through the borough, being stopped at places where we know we have hotspots to check them with the police. And we're looking to getting that back on track in the next couple of months. So a lot of work's going on, but as we know, fly tipping is a bit of a scourge in the borough, and it's increasing, but we are trying to do our best to be proactive, put up extra signage, and also we have issued a number of fixed penalty notices in the first quarter. I understand 2 had to be taken back because of age and because of lack of proof, but fixed penalty notices are being issued as well. So that's where we are with fly tipping at the moment.
Okay, thanks very much, and I appreciate the current problem. Yes. So my only other thing was, so I'm a new borough councillor, and there are quite a few acronyms in the report, and I just wondered if there could be defined somewhere, please.
Yes, I was actually going to mention this because I may have a CISSP at the end of my name now, and so I know what ITIL and the Society for Information Technology Managers and things like that is. But can we please go easy on the acronyms? CX, customer experience, etc. There's no point in going for too much on the acronyms. Please, let's tone them down a tad. And my war against acronyms continues. Clive, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Guy. Thank you, Keely, for your report. How do we make equalities assessments to be key priorities in everything that we do?
Sure.
Currently, when we plan to undertake a service or a piece of work, equalities assessment is not always one of the first things that we think about. Sometimes it comes halfway through the process, sometimes it comes through or consultation, sometimes it comes at the very end. What are you going to do to make sure that it comes right at the beginning?
Sure. So let me just step back slightly. So the equalities assessment piece of work has to be done with anything that any change in service or proposition, and colleagues do know that. It's the responsibility of each directorate to make sure that they're upholding that. So for place and growth, Steve Moore and his top team will be making sure that if there's a change to highways or there's a change to the town centre, that those forms will be completed. And then it's also part of the governance team, I guess, if it's left hand, right hand, the governance team also makes sure that they are in place as part of their auditing process. As owning equalities as a corporate response absolutely sits with me. And that's more to the point, Clive, and and we've discussed this, the equalities plan and how we build that out for the borough, and we make sure that that remains live and dynamic as we continue to try and make a difference in that area, as well as on the HR piece now as well, in terms of equalities within the council, and making sure that we bring that to bear in all that we do.
Okay, thank you. 20th Century Council. That wanted everyone to access Woking and Borough Council services via email and online. And now, as we're coming out of COVID, where we haven't been able to see people face to face, are we going to get a surge in people wanting to come in to the Borough Council so they actually see somebody face to face? Are we going to be able to cope with that? And are we putting in place a reversal of 20th century councils so that people can get a good service over the phone or when they come into shooting.
Sure. So I guess with the 21st century council was before my time. So whilst I can't comment directly, I would say that it's really important from my perspective with my customer hat on that people are able to access the council as best fits them. And we need to make sure that we have the channels and the capability to be able to deal with a customer who wishes to walk through the door, phone us up, use the internet, use our app, etc., as best fits their needs at the time. With regards to your question of whether there's a storing up of people who wish to, the minute full restrictions lift, or wish to come to Shoot End, I honestly don't know. But absolutely, if we started to see an uptick in that, we make sure that we had the customer services folk there to help customers as they need to. I imagine, unless you know something I don't, Clive, but I imagine it wouldn't be more than what we were supporting and working with before. I guess also though we must be mindful of the backdrop that everyone is still encouraged to work from home right now. So I'm sorry I can't give you an exact point on each of those questions you just asked, but that would be my view in the round.
Okay, and so we're going to come up with a poverty program, develop a strategy to reduce poverty within Wokingham Borough. When is this expected to come before the council?
So I'd like it to come before the council as soon as we can. The manager of the strategy and planning area, unfortunately, has left the council recently, so they've gone on to pursue another opportunity elsewhere, and so I do now need to replace. But that said, there are 5 blocks of work that have been identified for that particular project, want a better phrase, and we've just done a really great piece on the voice of the customer and lived experience around poverty. We used an external consultant to conduct a number of interviews with our residents, and also did some work with businesses as well, which is really really good insight back to what Anne and I were talking about a second ago. So I'd love to get a draft to the council in the next couple of months, but it will be slightly predicated on me being able to rehire the manager of strategy and planning.
Thank you. And in addition to that, Keely, just to answer it and then I'll answer the question live as well. The poverty strategy is something that is being looked at by Overview Scrutiny Management. It is on the forward plan. We did discuss it at Overview Management last week. I cannot for the life of me remember what meeting it's being penciled in at, but the desire is to get that on there as well. So we'll refer back to management when that comes forward.
Okay, thank you.
So that's currently coming into a July meeting to discuss the progress on that. So anything else, Clive?
No, thank you, Guy. But
okay.
If we haven't got somebody in post looking at this, there might not be much to discuss in July.
Yeah, it's the strategy though on that point. So I suspect we'll get more detail later. Shirley.
Thank you, Guy. Hello, Keely. Couple of things. In your preamble, I heard the word customer forums coming up, and I think that's a really useful idea. I think one of the problems that I hear a lot from residents is about our website and how difficult they find it to navigate and to actually achieve what they want to achieve. And I think if there are going to be changes to the website, having customers coming in and having trying to do simple tasks would be great. One of the things I'd also like to see is customers with disabilities being able to come in, and I don't see the word disability particularly in any of these ambitious aims, and I think it's quite important. And it was something that the council did some years ago, because my late husband was disabled, and he was actually involved with a forum for the council where, when changes were coming in, he was consulted. And that opportunity for him came via the Multiple Sclerosis Society, whom the council obviously had some contact with, but there were other disabled people with different disabilities came along to help shape the way things were done. So I think that would be a really good step forward, and it would help enormously with completing equalities impact statements.
Great, lovely, thank you.
Yeah, so that's an observation. And the other thing is, this is great. It's really ambitious. Lots of things to work towards. Do you have enough staff to bring this about, or have you still got gaps in staffing that need to be filled?
That's a really great question. Thank you for teaming me up. Look, I've had, at the point of taking the directorate on May last year, I spent a bit of time just going through all my inherited colleagues, which was fantastic, but there were a few areas that didn't make sense to continue sitting with me. So procurement, accounts payable and receivable, for example. So I've been working with my other directors and colleagues to passport out bits of people and money to make sure that accountability and responsibility are put together in the right place for the council. So do I still have some gaps in my directorate? Yes, a few. The customer and insight AD, and I'll be very open with you. I have done 3 rounds of interviewing for that particular position, and every time we get to second round interview, unfortunately, the candidates tend to pull out, and I can talk to you separately as to why. So there is still some work to do. As I mentioned earlier, my HR AD starts on Monday, so that's been a position that has been through council because it came through the MTFP piece. So they start on Monday, which will be a huge help. The customer and insight AD, we need to go back out to advert again, but that's fine, that can be solved. And there are a few, Simon mentioned a couple of recruitments that we need to do. There's probably a handful still of vacant posts that we do need to fill, because it's not only important to fill in order to deliver the ambitious plan, but actually colleagues around are taking that strain whilst that post is vacant. So it's really important that we, for well-being perspective as well, that we make sure that we add folk back where they need to be to make sure that we can actually deliver. So yes, I'll always take more people and more resource to your question, but it's right that we run efficiently in the same breath.
Thank you for that.
Okay, thanks, Sam. And then I've got one question. Then I think we need to move on to the next item because we've still got 2 to go. Paul, and a couple from Paul if needed.
Hi, so my question relates to page 37 on technology. So you mentioned that there was a cyber attack not long ago at WBC. Could you elaborate a bit more on what WBC is doing to protect its systems against future cyber attacks, but also potential future ransomware attacks? And for those who don't know what a ransomware attack is, that's where unscrupulous individuals will target systems of local authorities, demand money to release control, and that's becoming ever prevalent across the globe.
Thank you for the question, Sam. As this is a public meeting, there are certain questions I'm unable to answer right now, but I'm more than happily pick up with you on that separately, if that's okay.
Yeah,
sure, no problem.
We need to take this as a Part 2 private item from that point of view. So I'm glad you said that, Keely. Sam, was that it?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, Paul, quickly.
Yeah, thank you very much. Most of my questions have actually been answered, either in your presentation or what Simon said, or what some of the other members have been saying as well, or asking. I've got a couple. One of the services which is used by virtually everybody here is highways, and I actually report an enormous number of highway defects during the year. And tracking highway defects is something I would really like to see. You go on to a system called basically HIMS, put in what the defect is, put in a photograph, blah, 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 and then you get a reference number comes back. And if you know the system, the pothole, let's say, for example, should be repaired in 7 days or 28 days, unless it's an urgent one. And sometimes it actually disappears off the system and you don't see it again. So you need to create an Excel spreadsheet to put all these reference numbers down, because when you actually get feedback, you just get your defect W123456 has been repaired. It doesn't tell you where it is, and you don't know what it was. So unless you've got a spreadsheet actually set up, you don't know what you've actually reported previously. So I'd really like to see some improvement in that. And when they disappear off the system, unless you know what you've actually put in there and when you've put it in, you don't actually know what's disappeared. So you need to keep a track of all of that. Otherwise, you need to start chasing them up again to find out what's happened to them. So you did say, correct me if I'm wrong, you say that's in the medium term to do some improvements there. I think it needs to come up on a higher priority, because it is a system which I think you'll find is used by a lot of residents and as a borough member, we are pushing residents to actually use that system rather than keep coming through the borough councillors just to report it on their behalf all the time.
Sure. Thanks, Paul, for raising that, and I can hear the frustration. I think on a wider point, when we were talking about work tracking generally, I meant on a medium term, but things like that, and back to my hopefully earlier qualification when I was talking, I did say we want to focus where customers have the most to say and perhaps grumble most, and this sounds like this would be one of those areas, Paul, so I'll happily take an action to put that forward into the customer journey mapping team, and we'll have a look at that in the round. So thank you for flagging.
Just have one very minor other one, which was on page 42 in a normal year. You've got 1,000 planned library events to take place, but in a normal year, would you be delivering 1,000 or is it slightly more than that, considering all the issues with still COVID and everything else?
Yeah. And again, Simon, do keep me on the straight and narrow here, but the libraries collective do a really great job of lots of mini events as well. So they do a lot of things online, as well as in obviously previously in real person, real time. I get your point around the number, and I'm happy to go back and just gently challenge the team a little bit. But I don't know, Simon, if you want to elaborate more.
I don't have detail on the 1,000, but I've been involved in this agenda for the last 6 months. The group, the libraries team, are continually engaging with younger community. They're doing book clubs online once COVID hit. They've actually been doing some other events online, so we can share the detail with you, Paul, outside the meeting.
That would be fine, thank you.
In fact, you can actually share it with all of us, because the library strategy is coming to us in September. So you've got plenty of, we can certainly get into more detail on that. We will move on now, but I know that Shahid has been patiently with his hand up, so we'll take his point or question, and then we'll move on to the next item. But first of all my questions got answered. So thank you very much for the response so far. So quickly, Shahid.
Thank you, Chair. It's actually a quick comment, so it's not a question, so you will need to know. I won't take much of your time. First of all, I just want to thank Kitty for actually, well, it's a brilliant report. There's a lot of ideas, fresh ideas. It's really pleased to see those ideas, which are normally actually not undertaken in the public sector. So obviously coming from the private sector, that's really, you can see that sort of fresh ideas coming in. There's just, can I just want to add one point to the question which Anne asked regarding the insight. I think that's really key here moving forward. And what I've seen is that traditionally, when in my previous role as a councillor, what we do is we look at some data or information in isolation, but we don't look at that bigger picture, right? by putting everything together. And that's what we're referring to by having the insight. You have all the different data sets, you bring it all together, and you really understand the whole picture. Sometimes they call it like 360 view of the situation. So only you can do that when you have the whole situation you look at all of it. Sometimes actually they give an example of just imagine a navigation system. You're driving a car, you've got a dashboard in front of you, you know exactly which speed you're going, how much petrol have you got, or how much air pressure have you got, and if anything needs changing, you can actually do that on the go. That picture, that view, I believe council didn't have that before. And with the view you're presenting before, hopefully we'll get that. And what does that mean? That means a huge thing, I believe. So that would mean a better decision making as a result of that. That means we can identify more efficiencies. That means we can actually measure the value for money at the end. And that means better customer services. Why? Because we can only make decisions on what we know. If we don't know, then we don't know. So I thought that's really, insight is absolutely key. And I'm looking forward to working with you in my new role. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do have to apologise because Phil, you appear to be directly in the line of cardboard right between my visibility. So I missed your hand. I'm sorry. Very quickly, please.
It will be quick. Probably small follow-up to come, but Keely, nice to see you. Thank you for this programme, but could you just expand a little bit, please, on your comments about capturing customer feedback? You say it's across customer touch points, key ones. Could you tell me, is that formalised like experience questionnaires, or is it a little bit less formal?
So no, it's formal. It's a system called GovMetrics, which is used in other local authorities, as I understand. And we have adopted it across our website. And we're now looking to bring that into the phone usage. So that's the customer service phones. And eventually we'll move that then into some of the customer service email areas as well. And it is formal. It says to a customer, how did that interaction just go? And you get a chance to through the website to and please feel free to try this out. I'd welcome any feedback. The smiley faces, so you have a happy, indifferent, I guess, and then a grumpy face. And it also allows you to provide some pre-formatted text if you wish to then try and give us a bit more of explicit information. And as I said, I gave the URL example earlier on, but it's been exceptionally helpful. And there are times where we see customers, we will get seasonality, obviously. So we had more people making comments around council tax around April time, because obviously as one account closes and the next year's opens, we get some more feedback then. We had some more feedback in April around waste and the delivery of waste through our third-party supplier. Partly impacted on the fact that the third-party supplier had also been asked to deliver extra food waste bags. And so those things, it's really helpful, back to Shahid's point around insight. What's superb is this is another point of triangulation, if you like, so we can see the impact of some of our decisions and just making sure that we're making the right call at the right time with our resources, our third-party supplier resources, so on and so forth. So I'm more than happy to pick up with you outside of the meeting if you're interested. More than happy to do so with Jackie Whitney, my head of customer services, who's fantastic. As we start to see this insight, it is actually really quite interesting and helpful.
Thank you. I guess that might be the case, and what your answer might have been. One of the things that we use to drastically improve the performance of the service that I run in my day job was actually picking up key feedback from patients, as we call them, which was expressed but not delivered as a point. So yes. Very often you can have someone ring up to say that their blue badge is missing. Yes. But then they'll mention the fact that something is wrong along the road, which caused them to worry about it. And that is actually a key piece of information which is lost. Is there a system via which, or are you planning to look at a system by which you could capture that sort of conversational feedback, which could be very valuable?
I think that's about the complaints process that you've touched on there, Phil. I think I've come from an organisation, a FTSE 100, where any expression of dissatisfaction is logged as a complaint. And that, again, is a cultural change and a training piece that we need to bring to bear in this council. And I think that'll be hugely helpful. And the more that we can capture from all the people who are the eyes and ears on the ground, because it isn't just the customer services team, there's a lot of our great staff and colleagues who are out and about and do spot things and report things as well. And it's just how can we take that in the round and make sure that we're using all the opportunities we get to get the voice of the customer and that feedback to bring it into our central thinking and making sure that we're acting upon those things. That would be really powerful. So yes is what I'm saying, but I think that's part of the bigger customer complaint piece.
Okay. Keely, thank you very much for that. That was very, very useful. There's going to be some areas that we will have you coming back for in the future, especially on library. I suspect broadband provision might come under Keely's remit as well. So thank you very much. There'll be some follow-up questions coming, I suspect, but now we're going to move on to the next one. So if you need to head off, please do. And we're going to go on to the planning application consultation thing for item 14, which I believe is Marcia who's taking that, if I'm not mistaken.
Hello, good evening. My name is Marcia Head. I am the service manager for planning. I'm just going to talk to you very briefly about the requirements for publicity for planning applications. So those requirements are set out in a statutory instrument, and they require councils to either go and put up a site notice or to write to adjoining landowners. And through the statement of community involvement, Wokingham Council has opted to write to adjoining landowners, which we do. And over and above that, we also send a site notice to applicants and ask them to put it up voluntarily. In addition to that, for larger scale planning applications, there's more onerous requirements. So, for example, the planning officer has put up a site notice, and there's a requirement for notices in local newspapers. So this is all statutory, and we don't have much control over it. And last year we sent 26,000 neighbour notifications. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Shirley, I can see your hand already. And then Alison.
Thank you, Guy. Thank you, Marcia. Yeah, I've got a few questions to ask, and I appreciate that you're doing what is statutory. But one of the complaints I get a lot of from residents is, we didn't get consulted. We didn't have anything through the post, and I've had that quite a lot in my 2 years of being a councillor. And I'm interested to know what you send out. Do you send a letter in an envelope? Do you send a postcard? What exactly is going out to the residents that they all seem to be missing? And it's either not landing in their letterboxes, or it's just they're missing it because it's mistaken for a pizza leaflet or something. I'm just trying to find out what it is that's going out. That's my first question, and my second question is that it's in a lot of the cases I realise that resistance is futile in a way, and that actually objecting to the application probably isn't going to yield any results. However, the residents seem to get very upset because they want to be consulted. They feel aggrieved if they haven't been consulted, and this is obviously particularly at the moment coming up a lot with these telecommunications masts, which are causing lots of problems around the borough. So I just think we should be doing everything we can to make sure, even if we go a bit over and above what's statutory, to make sure that people are getting consulted and that they feel part of the process.
So we send a postcard, which is A5 size. So that's half of A4. So it's not a small postcard, it's a large postcard, and it very clearly has the Wokingham Borough Council crest on it. So you can see it's an official notification from the council. and it's not in an envelope, so it's open, so it's very easy to see the words planning application on it. And there are some types of application where there is no requirement whatsoever for publicity. We do sometimes, if it's brought to our attention that it's a sensitive planning application, we can send some additional notification. But a resident doesn't have to be formally consulted in order to comment on an application. And I think neighbours do speak to each other, and they do speak to their councillors, and they do get to know when there is current applications, and they're all available on the council's website to look at, and you can comment via the council's website.
Thank you. Yeah, I certainly understand that. And it's interesting that it's a card, so it's not a letter. I certainly still feel that perhaps what on the card, perhaps it could say, you know, it could perhaps, I don't know what the information is other than it says here is a planning application. You can find it on the council's website, and gives details of that. Does it actually, you know, say to people, lots of people are not on the internet, perhaps, don't know how to access the council's website. Does it say on there, you know, you could consult your local councillors about it? Does it give contact details for local councillors? I'm just trying to understand why it is that people are saying to me they are not getting these cards. And I've had this on 2 or 3 applications now. And as you've said yourself, that some applications don't have to have a notice go up. So people find out very late in the consultation, you know, that something's going on quite often. And it really does upset people. And I just think we want to try and just do it a bit better, really.
Can I come in here, Marsh? I'm sorry, Shirley, because town and parishes get notified. You get notified of every application in your area. We've sent out 26,000 postcards in the last year. COVID hasn't affected planning. We've had over 4,000 applications. So if you take the two together, based on the fact that we've got around 68,000 homes in the borough, that means that via this postcard that we are getting to about 38%. Now, if I see every application in my ward, if I see a slightly sensitive one, believe me, I'll make sure that I'm making myself known to those residents. Most of these are small extensions, but you can tell quite easily by looking at an application whether it's sensitive or not. I think, and we have had, myself and Marcia, along with Justin and Jason, we met with, I think it's in your area because they mention your name. Is it ASA?
Yes, that's right. The Residents Association. Yeah.
Yes. Now they raised some of the issues that you've got going on in your area about the multiples HMOs, which seem to be attracting a certain part of the area. Yours isn't the only one, but I think it's mainly around Early and parts of Shinfield where we've got the biggest issues. But they never raised the issue of the notification, because don't forget, as well as that, there is the voluntary code where an applicant can put up the site notice. And believe me, once a site notice goes up, everybody in the street can see it. If they're walking by or they're a neighbour or they live across the road, etc. So I just can't understand why this is a particular problem in your area.
I don't know. Maybe it isn't just in my area. I don't know whether other councillors have had similar experiences to this, but certainly it's feedback that I'm getting back, and I'm reporting that to this meeting. You know, the other thing I'd like to say is as well with something like a telecommunications mast, the impact they have is on a much larger number of people and residents than just the ones who are adjacent to the site, just because of the scale of them. And I realise you're doing the statutory minimum, but I wonder whether in those instances there could be a wider radius of people who are consulted and told about it. I mean, I certainly do go around knocking on doors, but equally as a councillor, you don't want to go around soliciting complaints, but equally you want the residents to be informed that something is going on.
No, because I think you're right, and I've seen the things you put on Facebook about the one in Woodley, but then equally, you know, there are two sides to these masts. I mean, there are people that want to get 5G and want to get it a lot quicker. So in some respects, you've got residents that saying this is a good thing. I understand what you're saying. There will be some on the other side that are saying this is a bad thing. But again, I mean, the amount of publicity that one in Woodley got, I think that probably attracted most people in Woodley. So I'm surprised that people in Woodley didn't hear about that one.
Yeah, well, actually, the people locally didn't hear about it until I put posters up all over the park. And actually, there were only about 40 houses who apparently were sent a communication. But out of those 40 houses, I only found 8 people who actually said they'd seen it. And an awful lot of people said they wouldn't have known anything about it at all had I not put posters up on all the trees in the park to tell them it was going to happen. So I just think we could try a little harder to engage with residents.
I think there's a part that we all play. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but if I get any sensitive application in my ward, I think I've probably got 15 people on my case before even it's day 2. I think there's a big part that parish and town councils can do. The parish council knows about it. If you take Hurst, for example, we've got 10 parish councillors spread out across the whole of the parish, and we separate them out into two. So each planning application goes to 2 parish councillors in areas, so they see it, so they can have conversations with the residents. So I think there's lots of ways. I mean, if you think about it, you've got the council, the ward councillor, the parish councillors. You've got the notice that goes out to, on average, six residents per planning application. So there is a lot going on. I mean, sometimes, you know, people throw all sorts of things in the bin and don't read it. I think a lot of people don't see it until somebody's raised it formally with them, or i.e. by knocking on their door or raising, you know, or raising through a parish council or a borough councillor.
Yeah, okay.
Shirley, I'm just going to go to Alison quickly because she indicated, but is this also potentially the same problems that we're having, and this is a general question, that we have with poll cards at election times? Because the amount of people who I'm certain all of us here have sat on polling stations, asked for polling numbers, and said, I don't know, I didn't receive a polling card. I know I'm registered and things like that. So is that another aspect as well? But Alison.
I'm not sure if Wayne's covered this. I just wanted to understand what the change was in the amount of notice, the information we give to the public since you know, the new statement of community involvement, our new policy since March 2019, where it mentions the adjourning owner occupiers on land. It sounded like it was just the immediate neighbours, whereas in the past it was usually, you know, next door but one, you know, just the people in the immediate vicinity. But with Wayne mentioning there was an average of 6, does that mean there has been a change or there hasn't?
I think the average is 6 because for some applications there's only 3 because the adjoining landowners are the one either side and the one to the rear. But for more sensitive or larger scale applications, we send a lot more. So the average is 6. Some are less and some are a lot more.
So that wouldn't include the neighbour living directly opposite the house then?
No, that's right. But then if it's a rear extension, they're not going to see it.
No, certainly not if it's at the rear, but you know, if it's at the front, it's, well, they're looking at it all day, aren't they? Thank you very much for that clarification.
But don't forget, Alison, in planning, you don't have a right to a view. If you like the view, you should buy it.
Well, I'm a very rich person with this view here. In that regard, over to Clive.
Yeah, thank you very much, Guy. I'm afraid, Wayne, we all haven't got millions of quid where we can buy the views outside of our back gardens, especially if you live in the Graiseley area or around Halls Farm or other areas that we're planning to develop.
Well, in Graiseley, you could, because there won't be no building going on there.
I think that was an unfortunate answer, but I would like to support what Shirley has just said. I get complaints that residents haven't heard that there is going to be some development near them. One of their neighbours is going to have an extension, front, back, side, or wherever, or all of them. Sometimes when we get to the planning committee of Early Town Council, some residents will complain. And I think that they actually have got a valid case, because if we are sending out an average of 6 of these A5 postcards, then it isn't enough, because we're going to be sending them to perhaps 2 neighbours, perhaps 1 person behind, when there may be 3 or 4 houses behind, and there are going to be people the other side of the street. And I think that is probably where the problem is. You've got somebody who lives, let's say, at number 5 in a road, and the development is happening at number 11, or opposite them at number 10 or 12. And they think that they should be advised that it's happening, even though it is 50 yards or 60 yards away from where they actually live, especially if it is a change of use and it's going to become an HMO. So although we send out 26,000 notifications a year, and that is a lot, and it probably takes quite a bit of time to do that, I would suggest that it probably isn't enough. You want to comment, either of you? You obviously do think it's enough.
Well, we certainly get tens of thousands of comments on planning applications every year, tens of thousands.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. But do you think that sending out 26,000 notifications a year, an average of 6 planning application, is actually enough? Or do you think that we could actually be providing a better service for the resident by increasing that number?
Well, it's a matter of balance. I mean, we can notify every single resident in the borough of every single application, but
No,
that
that's being silly, actually. That's quite a stupid answer.
I'm just giving you an extreme answer. There is a balance. Planning is all about balance, and whether or not someone objects, we still take into account the impact of development on people, whether or not they have objected. And as I said earlier, they don't need to have received a notification in order to comment on an application. And people do get to hear about applications in their area. And all planning applications are on the website, and you can search on a map. So if you're interested in a particular address, you can go to the website and search on the map. And people do get to hear about applications in their area.
Okay, I think I might come in here from the chair, because I suspect there's going to be some more comments coming around. But what this seems to be boiling down to, and I've had complaints, I'm pretty certain every member here has had complaints about the planning application process of notification, the actual way that we have noting things on the website and things. I think what I'm feeling, and this is probably something to do rather than our process, it's also probably a bit of national, but I think it's we can take a step back for a moment and look at what Keeley was talking about earlier with basically community engagement and community strategy point of view. I think what residents are actually asking us through councillors this evening, what Shirley's mentioned, what Alice mentioned, what Clive's mentioned, I've received as well, is effectively, can we please bring the planning application process out of the 19th and into the 21st century? Because the cards that we get, polling cards, the whole process, it doesn't seem to be making the impact that it did 10, 20, 30 years ago. So is there possibility for your team, Marcia, and also you to a lesser extent, Wayne, to basically look to see if there's a way that we can link these planning applications to any future data of incident reporting, the customer accounts, etc. So that if there is anything within, let's say, the immediate postcode, in which if you put my postcode in, I get 19 addresses, so that the notification of if there is anything, it can ping it through to that website. That will give a much more greater access, but it's also giving more data and allowing residents to be a lot more aware. I think that is where people want to go. Now, this may be me stepping out of turn, but that's the feeling that I'm getting from listening to everyone in the room and also from talking to residents about this. Please do come back with your thoughts on that, because something's not quite right here. It doesn't sit well with me.
We have in the past looked at the possibility of residents having an account, and if they tick the box that they want to be notified of planning applications, then we could do that. But the problem is householders move on average once every 4 years, and the planning requirements require us to write to the adjoining landowner. So if they were signed up with their email address and they've moved, and we email them and think, well, we've done our job now because we've notified that person, but actually in reality, if they've moved house, we have not notified the new owner. So, you know, we'd have to have a two-tier system whereby customers could create an account, but we would still have to write to the adjoining landowner. And if we were going to go down that route of customers being able to create an account, then that would be a big IT change, which would have to be properly resourced and wouldn't happen overnight.
Of course, it wouldn't need to happen overnight in that regard. Wayne, I'd be keen to hear your point, because at the end of the day, what we've got to try and do is serve residents here.
Well, as Marcia said, and she wasn't being flippant, that you could potentially write to, in certain areas, like you've just described, if you put in your postcode and you get 90 searches, you could, in theory, write to all of those 90. I think one of the things you've just got to place on this is what Marcia also said around planning balance, because you generally get, and I don't know what the number is, but a large amount of them are for the more sensitive applications. And there is probably, well, the majority of people probably don't understand that most applications, most permitted development applications, residents think they need planning applications for. Most householder applications, people think that they have lots of reasons that they can object. Unfortunately, on both of those, permitted development, especially during COVID, our enforcement numbers have nearly doubled because of the amount of garden rooms that have gone up, and people don't understand permitted development. Now, you can quite easily, if you go online, within 5 minutes, get to understand what permitted development is all about, and you could understand that most of those inquiries we get from residents, they could almost disappear. But residents do think by contacting the council and getting an enforcement officer out, they've got a better chance of getting something removed or taking action. So that's on the permitted development. On the householder, as I said, that I think our number is it 98.9%, Marcia, of all applications are approved. based on the guidance, the MPPF2. So it's not a personal decision by an officer, they are following guidance. So yes, we could write to more households, lots more households. Obviously that would cost a lot more money. Application prices or the fees for applications are set nationally. So that doesn't take into account employing a planning officer in Wokingham versus a planning officer in Mid Wales. I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that they do a different job, they don't, but the cost of employing somebody is very different. So if you were to increase the number, then obviously the council, that there would be a significant cost to the council. I'm wondering, I know you say you hear loads of councillors complaining about this. The only areas that I've genuinely heard feedback, or we've had feedback, is Early Town Council and Shirley and the organisation we mentioned earlier. Now, I'm not saying in the last 10 years you've had one person moan to you or two people moan to you. I'm not suggesting that, but there seems to be, from our review of the situation, there seems to be, if there is an issue, it will be in those areas. So I'm wondering if it's something the town council could act on. You know, you've got a big town council in Early. Is it something that they could support with?
Maybe this is something we can also raise at Borough Parish Working Group going forward. Okay, I'm very conscious of time, people, because we've got one more item to cover, and it's actually a big one. So I'm going to focus on in the room for the time being. I've forgotten who's indicated. Okay, it was Anne, it was Paul, it was Shirley, and then Sam, and we're then drawing a line. I think we might need to come back to this and look at it in a much more thorough fashion, because something still doesn't sit right here, and maybe we just need to take this offline and have a conversation internally first, and then see what we can do as a planned strategy going forward, much like what we did with burials. Forgotten who I said now. Anne, wasn't it? Yes.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Yeah, just very quickly, I was going to say, is it always A5 cards that you've sent out, you know, sort of going back many years, or did you ever send out notice applications in some other form?
Years ago, it used to be a letter in an envelope, but it was addressed to the occupier, and I think people were just throwing them away.
Would it be feasible to send out a letter with the householder's name on, or would that be too difficult from an IT point of view?
No, that would be too difficult. In the planning department, we don't have records of who lives at what property.
Right, okay. And then the other thing is, I don't. Somebody else might be wanting to suggest this. Could the posting of the notice be mandatory? Because it sounds as if that's voluntary at the moment.
The regulations say the council can either go and post a notice itself, or can send neighbour letters. And I have worked in other councils where the planning officer goes and puts up the notice, and the problem is they get taken down, they get destroyed, something happens, and then people are unhappy because it wasn't displayed for 21 days. And the regulations say as long as it was put up, even if some unhelpful person removes it the very next day, the fact that it was put up is sufficient to meet the requirements. So one of the things that, say, members or towns and parishes could do would be to go and knock on the door and say, oh, we understand that the applicant is sent a voluntary notice. I can't see it up anywhere. Please, can you put it up?
So, okay, thank you.
Okay, Paul.
Yeah, thank you. Wayne, you mentioned about parish councils, borough councillors, what they can do. In Winnersh, we put information on the Facebook page, and it's also the agenda for our planning committee, which is monthly. I think one of the issues is actually getting residents to actually have a look at the information and then submit their comments to the planning authority rather than submitting their comments on Facebook only.
Yeah.
And this has come up time and time again, because at the end of the day, it's too late shouting and bawling about something when the decision's been made to go ahead with something, despite people have put things on their Facebook. There are certain developments, though, which do cause a few problems. Some are change of use. Some of the smaller developments where, you know, it's not a large one where it goes out to a much wider audience, you know, the up to 10 units, that sort of thing. And one other area is permitted developments where it's currently office space and it's going to be changed to apartments, and that just disappears through everything and misses everybody. I think it's something or some mechanism somehow where people were actually informed about it would help, and maybe a certain radius away from the development. So, some mechanism needs to be put in place to capture those, because I know of one in one particular ward. It's not in Willish, where nobody was actually informed about it, and these office developments are being converted under permitted development, and it's going to change the impact of that area quite significantly, and I think that's the key there. But the other one is actually getting people to actually have a look at these and submitting some comments back to the planning authority rather than putting their frustration on Facebook.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree, Paul. And I've seen some of the stuff that you put on your Facebook page, etc. I have a similar issue with roads, trying to get people to follow the system as you were talking to earlier, rather than keep sending me emails or ringing me up. But I think you're right. I think there is a general reluctance from residents to send in general comments. I think if they live next door to a development, I think they're more inclined. I think if they live up the rear, they may be more inclined. I think where it's a general application, I think some struggle with what they can and they can't say, and we've done a lot of work in that area in terms of what you can object to and what you can't object to, and the pre-runner to that is on the postcode. I don't know about the particular development you're talking about, but if you let me have the details, then we can research as to where the postcards went out to when that application was submitted. Because I'm right in thinking, Marcia, I know we've got an average, and we always talk about an average, but for example, if it's 50 flats in X, we would go out to, well, it depends, again, it comes back to Clive's point. It comes back to the number of households that would adjoin it, doesn't it?
Well, if it's 50 flats, it falls within the category of major planning application. So 10 houses or more is a major application, and in those circumstances the planning officer goes and puts up site notices and the advert goes in the paper.
And it goes to planning committee.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shirley. Then we'll go to Sam, and then.
Thank you, Guy. A thought occurs to me that maybe because there have been in recent years lots of relaxations of planning laws, so there's a lot more permitted development, and you were saying earlier that maybe members of the public don't really understand what they can object to and so on and so forth. Maybe there's scope here for a communications exercise. Something goes out in the borough news, sort of a simplified guide to the planning system. This is what you can object to. That type. Maybe something like that would be something to consider.
I think you're right, Shirley. You where you are, that group that we've met a couple of times now, they're very informed and they're a very knowledgeable group, and you your area is lucky to have them. What we've tried to do over the last 2 years, and we've got another one coming up, we tried to do some training with the town and parish councils across planning and enforcement. So not just planning and enforcement, and we have done stuff in the past over borough news, and we try to do it when we have borough events where you might go to a, like your local Sainsbury's or Waitrose, when we were doing the borough plan. So we certainly can. We can do that because we're also looking at some other stuff for the borough news about the myth that we don't build 1 and 2 bedroom houses. So we're going to be looking at all our SDL so we can show the split of all the type of housing that we've got in our borough. So within that, we can update both on permitted development, and we can do a piece on HMOs, which I think affects early more than other areas, and we can do a piece on householder applications.
Looks like you've got enough for a series.
Yeah, it won't be as good as that.
I think that would go a long way, Wayne, to alleviate a lot of concerns in this room this evening. So whoever draws the short straw to write that guide. Sam.
Hello, Wayne and Marcia. Good evening. My question is, obviously, with the pandemic, more and more people now, everyone's at home, you'd be spending the bulk of the day in the office. Now that office is now your home. Is this leading to, I think you touched on this, Wayne, earlier, you made a really good point. Is this leading to an increase in more residents being aware of what's going on around the houses and making unwarranted sort of complaints where there is permitted development or modifications going on? And is this leading to an issue with, officers being sent out to sort of view things where there isn't an issue at all? And is this becoming a bit of an issue? And do you think this will change as we move out of or go back to normal?
We have seen a significant increase in householder planning applications for people who want to extend their house. In the first 5 months of this year, we had an 89% increase in householder planning applications over last year. And we have also had a significant increase in what we call requests for service to the planning enforcement team. People have been out on a walk, they've seen something being built and they've noticed something, and they have contacted the planning enforcement team. And something like 50% of contacts to the planning enforcement team are not a breach of planning control, but a planning enforcement officer does a site visit, goes around there, interacts with the landowner, and finds out what has been built. And I'm hoping that that numbers might go down again, but the number of households in the borough is increasing, the number of houses is increasing. So I think in the long term, the number of planning applications is likely to continue to rise.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, Sam, Marcia is absolutely right, especially in your ward and your adjoining wards. You've got lots of walks and people are seeing these buildings going up. And if they see the buildings going above the height of their fence, which is normally 1.8 metres, they think, well, that's not allowed. Well, in actual fact, if you've got a flat roof, you can go up 4 metres. You can put an extension on the back of your house 4 metres up by 4 metres out, providing you haven't had permitted development taken away and you're not in a conservation area, etc. And you don't need planning permission. But most people think they not only need planning permission, but they need to go through a solicitor. But you don't. I mean, the only time it may become an issue is when you go to sell that property. The solicitor acting on behalf of the buyer may insist on you putting in place retrospective or an indemnity against it, but you don't have to do it providing you achieve those rules, and they are quite large. And you can put porches up, 3 metre high porch, 3 metre squared. There is lots of things you can do, but Marcia is right. We've seen, at one point last year, at the beginning of the pandemic, we couldn't believe the amount of inquiries that were coming in, and they were in areas that we weren't normally seeing them. So it was obviously from people spending more time out walking and seeing these things when they hadn't seen them before. But we can include, sorry, I was going to say we can include some of that in our monthly serial.
Yeah, no, completely agree. I think you hit the nail on the head there. Everyone's at home, aren't they? So everyone's sort of noticing it when people spend the bulk of the day outside in the office or wherever everyone's working from home. So just by noticing it more, you're bound to sort of, as you mentioned, if something's protruding a little bit. But no, thank you both, Marcia and Wayne, for that.
Okay, we're going to move on now, but Marcia, Wayne, thank you very much for that. I think an action is I'm going to go along to a Borough Parish Liaison Forum and have a conversation with them about the planning applications and what they're perceiving as well, just so that we can get their intake. And we might need to bring this back in the later in the year or maybe next year to look at this in greater detail. Neil, I can see you're waving.
Just to say the Borough Parish Forum met earlier this evening, and this specific issue has been flagged as something for their next meeting, which is in October. So it's that did come from an early town councillor, as mentioned earlier.
What you could, sorry, could I just say, Neil, what you could do is you could encourage them all to come to our next training session, which is in the next 4 weeks, Marcia?
Yes.
So is there a planning process training session in the next 4 weeks then that we could, is that open to the parish?
We're working on date. Yes, sorry.
It's the 13th of July, but at the moment we're not sure how many people will be allowed in the council chamber, but we could record it.
I think recording it is a very good idea on that regard. 13th of July, I'm not available, but if other members are. Is that a point, Clive?
It would be very quick, Guy.
Really do need to move on.
Yes, it's just to say that early town council and the other town councils, probably parish councils as well, are only consultees as far as planning is concerned. So I don't think that we should be looking at saying to the town and parish councils, okay, in future, you've got to be sending out these 26,000 notifications. They have still got to come from the borough. And I think what we're looking for, what we've been talking about today, is the borough improving its services,
Agreed.
Not trying to pass it on to town and borough councils.
Agreed. But there is always the joined up working approach, which is sometimes better. But I think we need to look at this again. Paul, I'm going to...
Extremely quickly, the virtual, the training session which you mentioned on the 13th of July, if you could make that virtual, that would allow a lot more people to actually listen in as well. Thank you.
You actually took my point, but remember, if I ask you to stop. Yeah, we will look at this going forward. We are okay. Just so that we don't run out of time, I'm going to ask for an extension. I want us to be quick and do this, but we've only got 15 minutes left on this. So can we just formally extend, just so we don't have 15 minutes? Because this is the next item is the borough business and economic. Item 15, the COVID-19 business and economic response. I want to be able to cover this in the detail that it deserves. And Sam, I know you're looking at another screen, which is sometimes really odd that you're just looking at a full 90-degree angle. So can I have a second to extend just for an additional 10 minutes if needed? Okay, everyone's hand just went up, so I think we're good for that. So Wayne, I think you can head off as well on this, unless you're part of the economic recovery. So I believe it's Stuart and Rhiannon who's going to cover this.
Same guy. I
know you're sparing Paul, so thanks very much.
I don't think we'll need 10 minutes because you guys have done a hell of a job getting to where you are. And Rhiannon's behind me here, but what we're giving you is an update of where we're at. With this is an evolving situation. The report provides. I think you've all had the 11-page report. Yeah. It provides an update on where we're at, and if you go to page 8, you can see. Let's speed this up. Go to page 8. Page 8 is about the things we've done or we're doing. Yeah, and we've handed out it says 50 million, but it's actually 70 million pounds of grants. And please tell me if I'm wrong. but there's a whole list of things we've done. We've created a digital newsletter. We carried out engagement with 1,300 businesses. We distributed business grants, relief worth of 70 million. We could sit and look through the entire, I could read the whole list, but I don't think that's a good idea. I think, you know, continue to distribute the grants. This is an interim report. We're still working on it. We've got to get this business hub going. We need to establish the whole thing is about keeping aside our businesses. And, you know, we could talk all night, but Guy, thank you for that. Rhiannon, anything else you want to add?
Yeah, do you want me to just give a bit of a summary of some of the things that we found out?
We don't need to list the whole thing.
You know, I think a key issue is how difficult it is to sort of look at the local picture and sort of set out a trajectory of where we're going. The data that we're getting is often conflicting about the economy. It's constantly changing, and a lot of the information we're getting is perhaps 2 months behind where we are now. In normal times, that's fine, but things are changing still very, very quickly. We know for certain that businesses have been really quite badly hit, particularly in certain sectors, including retail, hospitality, arts and culture, leisure, tourism, aviation, for example. Unemployment is up, and yet we're still seeing signs of growth and sort of shoots of improvement. So there's a strong housing market, for example. Employment is actually unemployment is beginning to reduce. Some sectors are sort of reporting staff shortages. Hospitality premises are reporting that they can't get the staff to open for the periods of time that they want to. And we've also found that our town centre units that we're bringing online now are filling up really quite well. So that's a very, very positive signs coming through at the same time. We've seen some really interesting signs of change. So we've seen online shopping going up. And I don't know if anyone saw the reports today in the BBC that the demand for storage warehouses is up by 600%, which is a reflection of online shopping and the need for those dark warehouses and storage. And also working from home is increasing hugely. We know that there are risks out there, so more lockdowns coming up. And at the time of writing my report, the current lockdown was extended by a month. We know that whatever happened with Brexit is being impacted, as well as we've seen a lot of European nationals that were working here have returned home much quicker than we would have imagined ordinarily. And obviously the risk that's presented by ending of furlough as well. We're not quite sure what's going to happen around that. We do know that other positives are that Wokingham is in quite a strong position. It's always fared well when there's been an economic downturn because it's got such a strong economy with such low unemployment numbers. But because we've got so many office-based businesses compared with other parts of the country, that's given us a level of resilience because it's allowed our workers to work at home, continue trading and continue working. So you're looking at businesses such as logistics, construction, digital and media, all doing relatively well throughout this the COVID pandemic. At the same time, we've got a lot of opportunities coming up that we really must grasp and we must keep an eye out for. For example, we've got the Shinfield Studios coming up, so there's opportunities in media and production there. We hope to grasp some of the opportunities that come from the green economy, for example, as well. And as has just been mentioned by Stuart, we found that in distributing the grants, businesses have found those to be invaluable. So the feedback that we've got from surveys working with businesses is that they have said that those grants make a real difference to them. We put on marshals, which have helped people feel safe and confident in perhaps in a retail environment and perhaps come out and shop more frequently than they might have before. We set up a special trade-in platform for businesses over Christmas. There was a Christmas market, so some of our traders and market stalls could could trade online. We've also supported our town centres in opening, and we've just got another grant today for 150,000 for Safe Opening Up Fund, which will help some of our towns to invest and attract shoppers. And we've also worked with partners such as PPP to give really good advice on compliance and give businesses really first-class access to testing, which has helped them remain open during the COVID pandemic. What we plan to do next is really to try and understand the impact of the pandemic on the local economy, and to work really, really closely with businesses. So we plan to engage with all the businesses in the borough over the coming year and work on them where we can really help them, where our strengths are. So that would be around directing them to our partners who can give them business support, but also talking to them about our expertise in areas such as climate emergency and supporting them with health and well-being matters. But also we already give a lot of careers information, advice and guidance out, but making sure that that's the right careers and advice and guidance and targeting it to those people that need them. And most importantly, there's a big part for the council to play in terms of placemaking and creating the right environment to attract businesses into the area and attracting the right skills into the area as well. But I think it must be noted that we can't do everything for businesses. We can help them where we can, but there are specialisms where we just need to work with our partners and direct them to that area. So generally, I think it's going as well as it can be, and we're supporting our business as much as we can, and in some areas really very well, such as the distribution of grants. But it's a matter of understanding the picture going forward to see how we can help them further.
Thank you very much. Can we get any questions, please? And just a reminder, we need to be looking, I think at this point, we need to be looking at what's happened as opposed to what's going forward, because we're still a bit unknown in what's going forward. And I think if we start talking about the future and ifs and whats and things, we will be here all night. So let's concentrate on that. Yeah. Okay. Bill, Alison, then Clive. Thank you. Bill.
Thank you so much. A really encouraging report. I mean, I genuinely, I've got to say, when I speak to a lot of people, I work in a different area in Hampshire, and Wokingham Borough Council has just exceeded every expectation I could have had as a supportive organisation of the people and the businesses locally, and I think that should be noted. It's been superb. The question I actually have is, I couldn't see any particular note, but do you have any intelligence or understanding of the number of new businesses, especially maybe those based at home that might have sprung up during the pandemic, and how we might need to support them going forward?
That we will be able to get that information, but that's a typical statistic that has quite a big time lag. But I absolutely agree. New businesses that are coming out at a time like this are obviously are quite usually, I should say, the sectors and the businesses of the future. So we are looking at programs where we might be able to help them and support them. New business startups is one of our target areas in our recovery plan.
But there's lots of online stuff that we've done, which is really, really, really positive. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you, Alison.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that this is such a positive report. It's, you've covered so much because we did so much. The opportunities that you found to reach out to businesses and give them that support and ensure the local economy is still thriving. Thank you, Rhiannon, and all your team. What I basically wanted to ask was, what was the secret of your success in distributing the business grants so swiftly? Because, I read in the national media that some councils seem to be sitting on the government funding and they weren't getting it out there to keep companies afloat and keep jobs going. Was that to do with our computer systems or our staff or our strategy?
I think it was to do with our staff. I think we sometimes we sort of went ahead and delivered at the first possible opportunity, and sometimes perhaps a little bit before we should have done, I think, to make sure that the businesses got what they needed. But I think all credit has to go to Andrew and his team in the business rates department, who've worked really hard to get those grants out.
Thank you. Clive, and then Shirley, you've indicated.
Yep. Thank you, Guy. Thank you, Rhiannon and Stuart. I too think you've done a very good job getting 50 million quid out to people, and different other before said that on quite a number of occasions, and I think it is down to staff. You're absolutely right. The effort that those people put in, get the money distributed, and when people didn't respond, chase them up and push and remind them that there was people with a amount of money waiting there for them, and we were helping people fill in forms, did all of these things in the right way, and it's a shame a lot of other councils across the country didn't. You're talking about a team of business marshals. This is on page 3. Are those the COVID marshals that we currently have, or something different?
Yeah, they are the COVID marshals, and they started off as business marshals in our team, and they were patrolling specifically the retail areas to give people the confidence and the feeling of safety to encourage them to come out, and they have now become the COVID marshals.
I've always told these are the guys who were coming to Asda.
Yes, that's right. I was just going to say those are the guys that were going to Asda and ended up actually getting on very well with the management there. Actually, I think they used to call on the marshals when they had problems in the end, so that worked very well.
Oh, I think that relationship changed a lot from the beginning of May, even into January and February. It changed and really did improve, and some of the marshals were very, very helpful, and several of them gave me their numbers so that I could contact them directly as well. They were great. How long are we going to be keeping these COVID marshals?
Well, some of the funding that I was just talking about that we got for the the opening up fund, we can use that to extend the tenure of the marshals. I'm not sure absolutely how long that's going to be, but I think it's certainly for the next couple of months. But I can find out and come back to you on that one.
Okay, thanks. We're going to be contacting as many businesses as we can across the borough so that we can develop a strong, lasting relationship with them. Something that I know you're thinking about for the last 6 months, 12 months, something we should have done probably quite some time ago. Do you think we will be able to get to all of the businesses across the borough? And are we going to be able to identify their needs properly? Because a business that's employing several hundred people has got a very different set of problems to a business that is just employing 2 or 3 people, or even a one-man band.
Yeah, that's very true, and we've just done surge testing, and we've worked with about 1,000 businesses there, and it's really evident how different each business is and what their needs are. And when you look at the feedback that we've had on grants, and when we've engaged with businesses, you can see that their needs, depending on size, sector, all sorts of things, are completely different. So they're quite individualized, I have to say. So that I think is a bit of a challenge, but I think we should at least speak to every single business. We can put them into groups. So we've got the SMEs, the startups, as we were just talking about there, and the large corporates. So we've got enough of a team now that we can talk to them all and try and understand their sort of group needs and support them as much as we can.
Well, one of the problems you're going to get from the large corporates is, how do I get rid of my office block? What can you do to help me? That's right.
That's a possibility. We've seen places like Microsoft decrease its footprint considerably, because with people working at home now, they're using less and less space. So that may well be an issue going forward.
Have we seen a reduction in business rates because some of these larger office blocks are not being fully used? Are they able to say, you know, we've got 6 stories here, we're only using 2 floors?
I'm not sure what the rules are on business rates, but I think I don't think they can reduce business rates just because they're using less space. But as far as I'm aware, the demand for commercial space is continuing. There's been no let up, as far as I'm aware. But certainly we can look into that information again and get back to you.
Okay. Are we?
One more, Clive.
Yep. Furlough is going to finish, I think, in September. There's a possibility unemployment will start to rise. Are we going to ask companies to let us know if they are letting people go, so that we can start helping those people straight away, find another locally or far away?
There's no requirement on them to let us know, but we're going to certainly try and capture that information. I think that's really key. Some of the early information that we've had about businesses as well, for example, hairdressers have had young people, their assistants on furlough, and a large number of them have decided whilst on furlough that they don't want to be hairdressers anymore, for example. And so they've sort of changed career mid COVID, if you like. So there's some quite strange patterns coming out, and I think we would need to understand that. And part of what we plan to do is try and capture all that information, and where we can help, we will do.
Thank you, Sam.
And just a quick one from me, just say a big thank you to everyone involved. You know, I think because a number of quick and agile decisions were made, which meant that a number of businesses across the borough, you know, got the grants, got the money they needed so that they could survive, you know, over the last year. So just a big thank you to everyone involved that have done that so successfully across the borough.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Great.
Most of my questions got asked. Oh, Shirley, you indicated, didn't you? I apologise.
Really just one very, very quick question on the claimant count in the borough, having risen, and as of April 2021, it was at 3.3%. And I just wondered if, since writing the report, whether you've had any further update on that, and whether the trajectory is upwards or downwards.
Yeah, we haven't as yet, but it is that one is down 3.3 because it was 3.5 the previous one. So we're watching it with bated breath, really, to see which direction that's going to go. So
because that clearly has a huge impact on all sorts of housing benefit, council tax benefit, other issues that could cost the council money. So yeah, so it's obviously one to watch, isn't it?
It is, and it's predominantly younger people and older people, just pre-retirement age, that are impacted in there.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Clive, a couple more, and then I've got one.
Thank you, Guy. Do we know how many people have been furloughed in the borough?
We do know that figure, and I think was it in the report that I sent?
It was in there somewhere, I'm certain. It said 50% of businesses have used the furlough scheme, and 10,900, 13% of total jobs. Page number 7.
Correct.
But again, we get updates on that, so you know we can make that information available.
In your business health check, 10% of businesses said that they were struggling and not likely to continue trading. You know what's happened to those businesses? And this was a survey that we sent out and we got 96 replies back. How many surveys did we actually send out?
We actually sent out 5,000 surveys. So we sent it to our Business Matters database. We only got 96 back. But of all of those people, we will be calling them. So we haven't rung round them yet because we've been involved in the surge testing, but we will be calling them and getting more detail, as especially that 10%, to see if there's anything at all we can do to help them, whether we can direct them to support from another agency, and to see if there's anything there that we can do really, and to understand as well what the issues were that led to their demise.
Yeah, the other figure that is concerning is 30% of businesses, 34% had concerns about their employees' health and well-being.
And that is something that we've picked up a lot in surveys and talking to businesses that we have on the business task force, which is one of the reasons that we would like to, when we talk to them, is see if there's anything we can do around health and well-being. We've spoken to one of our partners, the CAB, who've done a lot of work with us around sort of health and well-being and having some of those mental health first aiders in the council, and seeing if we can help other business. Obviously, some of the larger ones, large corporates, will be obviously well advanced in supporting their workforce, but perhaps some of the smaller or medium-sized businesses, whether we can sort of share some of our learning and support and help them.
Yeah, I'm thinking a business that might just employ 10 people probably isn't.
Yeah.
Maybe aware of everything that. On page 8, talk about a £300,000 grant to invest in the public realm. How have we spent that?
So that was that grant came, and what we used that was at the beginning when we were looking at the social distancing and all the signage that we used. So we've used that across the borough to basically signpost social distancing, putting information leaflets out about legislation, advice and guidance around COVID. Also, we did quite a lot of work in some towns and villages around traffic management as well. So it's really been around the public realm and those areas, but also went to pay for some of the wardens as well, the warden work. I call them wardens, sorry, marshals, and the marshal work.
Just one last question then.
One last then.
The 5,000 surveys that we sent out in April, when do we intend to do another one? And what do you think you can do differently to try and get a better than 2% take-up rate?
It is really difficult with businesses because they get so many surveys that they start to get a little bit desensitized, I would say. I think our plan is to do it again in 6 months' time. And this time, perhaps it'll be something that we might do face to face when we actually meet with the businesses and go in and see them. But you're right, it is a low return, but that tends to be the situation if you bombard people with too many surveys, I think. So hopefully we'll get the same answers to questions, but we'll be able to ask those directly of the businesses as we go forward.
Thank you. I've got one question, and that is regarding the COVID. Excuse me a moment. Regarding the COVID marshals, got a frog in my throat. They've done some sterling work for us, and I know that their contracts are fixed term, as it were. I presume, due to the sterling work that they've done, that they are we are basically considering roles that they would be fitting for in the future, so that we can keep their services, energy and enthusiasm in the council, as it were. Just want to get that reassurance if they so choose to.
At the moment, the COVID marshals sit within Simon's team, actually, but I totally agree with what you're saying. I think some of the engagement they've done face to face, not just in terms of COVID, but in terms of economic development, has been really, really useful. And we were just talking just then about how it improved relations with ASDA, for example. I don't have the answer for you, but I think it's certainly food for thought and something we should explore further.
Thank you for that. Stuart, Rhiannon, thank you very much. This has been a very good report. There's some good bones and there's a lot of hope for the future in this regard. There's still a lot of work. There's still a lot of unforeseen circumstances that we cannot yet predict. But I think we can all be very proud of the work that's been done over the last 15 months in basically making sure that organisations keep afloat. But now I think it's very much looking into the future, and I look forward to hearing ideas and processes going forward on how we can basically keep these relationships going and improve things going forward. So Stuart, Rhiannon, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You may now leave, and also I think I'm going to use the chair's power a bit to state that we've got the sorry. I'll go ahead. Go ahead. It shouldn't take us long.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good night.
Good night, everyone on Teams who doesn't need to be here. All we're doing now is looking at our work schedule quickly in a few minutes. Enjoy your cuppa.
Thank you, members. I'll be very quick. I appreciate the time. The only updates I have is the 21st of July meeting is as stated on page 48. I've had updates from Rhiannon, who's obviously just left us now, that they can present the broadband provision update in September. As with the library provision, I've had confirmation from the libraries officer that can come there. Members did ask for that meeting for the arts and culture strategy, but having looked back, it was only actually reviewed, I think, about 3 or 4 months ago.
Yes.
So having had a little discussion with the officers, I think we'll schedule that for later in the year. I am looking for to schedule items for the 6th of October, and I think the best way for me to do that is for me to talk to the officers and then email you outside of the committee with updates on that. So unless there's any questions on that, I think I'll hand back to the chair.
Okay. Go ahead, Neil.
We had the first member scrutiny training session last week. A number of members here attended, and I think it went quite well. We've also got one commissioned on budget scrutiny. So this committee, I would imagine, will be keen to be involved in that. So it might be worth thinking about potential dates.
I refer to Callum and yourself and Neil and looking at potential dates on that, because I'm not looking at, I can't recall any diaries right now.
Could we avoid Tuesdays, please,
Yeah,
Neil?
avoiding Tuesdays is a good idea, especially because everything seems to end up on a Tuesday. Maybe look at a Monday when we've not got any overview meetings on, and potentially first week of August, maybe when it's a bit quieter.
It will obviously be virtual and remote as well. So even if you're working or whatnot, you know, as long as you can spare a couple of hours in the evening, there'll be no need to come in physically.
Okay, let's arrange that then. Okay, with that, thank you very much for the extra 15 minutes, everyone. I'm going to call the meeting to a close at just gone 11:15. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for your questions. Have a very good rest of your evening. And good night.